Rain made the city look guilty. It slid down the glass doors of Mercy General in trembling silver lines, blurring the flashing ambulance lights outside into red smears across the lobby floor. At 2:17 a.m., the emergency room had fallen into that strange kind of quiet nurses learned to fear not peace, not rest, but the breath before something terrible arrived. Elena Carter stood at the medication cart with a half-finished coffee cooling beside her and dried blood on the cuff of her blue scrubs. 29 hours awake, 2 trauma cases, 1 drunk who had tried to bite a resident, and now, finally, silence. Then the automatic doors opened. Not slid. Opened, as if someone had forced them. A man staggered through the rain with one arm pressed hard against his ribs. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black shirt soaked darker at the side. His hair clung wet to his forehead. Blood trailed behind him in slow, deliberate drops, bright against the sterile white floor. Elena moved before anyone else did. "Sir," she called, crossing the lobby. "Can you hear me?" He lifted his eyes. For one impossible second, the entire ER seemed to disappear. His gaze was dark, controlled, and violently alive, not frightened, not confused, not begging for help. He looked at Elena the way a wounded wolf might look at the only person in the forest who wasn't holding a gun. Then his knees gave out. Elena caught him with both hands, staggering under the weight of him. "Gurney!" she shouted. "Now!" A resident rushed forward, but the man's blood-slick hand locked around Elena's wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to choose. "Not them," he rasped. His voice was low, ruined by pain, but the command inside it made the resident freeze. Elena swallowed. "You're bleeding out. You don't get to be picky." Something almost like amusement flickered across his face. Then he whispered, "You don't know who's coming." The lights flickered. A nurse behind the desk gasped. Outside, 3 black SUVs rolled into the ambulance bay, without sirens, without hesitation, without caring that the space was restricted. Their headlights cut through the rain like knives. Doors opened in perfect sequence. Men stepped out. Not police, not paramedics. Men in black coats, moving with the cold discipline of soldiers and the silence of criminals. One of them had blood on his collar. Another carried himself like he had killed before breakfast and forgotten about it by lunch. The resident backed away. Elena didn't. "Trauma 2, she ordered. "Move." The man on the gurney still held her wrist as they rushed him down the corridor. His eyes never left her face. "What's your name?" she asked, pressing gauze into the wound. He breathed through pain, jaw tight, body fighting to stay conscious. "Luca." "Last name?" His mouth curved faintly. "That would make your night worse." Before Elena could answer, shouting erupted near the lobby. A crash. A scream. Then a sound she knew from too many late-night news reports and never wanted to hear inside a hospital. Gunfire. Everyone ducked. Elena's hands froze over Luca's wound. The doors to Trauma 2 burst open, and one of the black-coated men appeared, face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. "They found us," he said. Luca's eyes sharpened instantly. "How many?" "4 inside, more outside." Elena stared between them. "Who found you?" The man looked at her as if she had asked why the ocean was wet. Luca forced himself up on one elbow, blood spreading beneath him. "Elena," he said. She went still. She had not told him her name. His gaze dropped briefly to her badge, then returned to her face with unsettling focus. "Stay behind me." A bitter laugh escaped her. "You can barely sit up." Another gunshot cracked from the hall. The black-coated man reached under his jacket. Elena stepped between them and the door without thinking. "This is a hospital," she snapped. "No weapons in my trauma room." Both men stared at her. For the first time, Luca looked genuinely surprised. Then footsteps pounded closer. A stranger appeared in the doorway with a gun raised. Elena saw the barrel first. She saw his eyes second. And then Luca moved. Wounded, bleeding, half-dead Luca Moretti moved faster than any injured man should have been able to move. He grabbed a metal tray and hurled it with brutal precision. The gunman's shot went wild, exploding glass behind Elena. The black-coated guard fired once. The gunman dropped, dead before he hit the floor. Elena couldn't breathe. The ringing in her ears swallowed everything except Luca's voice. "Zoft. Dangerous. Close. You should have stayed behind me." She turned toward him, trembling with anger and shock. "Who are you?" Luca looked past her to the body in the doorway, then back into her eyes. Before he could answer, Another man screamed from the hallway. Then another. One by one, the sounds of violence moved farther away from Trauma 2, as if an invisible wall had formed around her, protecting her, killing for her. Luca's bloody fingers found the edge of Elena's sleeve. "Listen to me carefully," he whispered. "From this moment on, no one touches you." Elena stared at him, heart pounding. Outside the room, a man begged for mercy. Then the begging stopped. The first thing Elena noticed was not the dead man in the doorway. It was the blood on her hands. Not Luca's blood anymore. Other blood. Blood that did not belong in a hospital room. Not on the white tile, not on the metal cart. Not spattered across the blue privacy curtain beside the trauma bed. She had spent years learning how to survive emergencies by narrowing her world down to practical things. Pressure, pulse, airway, oxygen, bleeding. But there was no practical place in her mind for a man being executed 10 feet away from her. Her fingers trembled around the gauze. Luca watched them. "Look at me," he said. Elena did not. Another low thud echoed from the hallway. A body, maybe. A door. Something heavy meeting the floor. Her stomach twisted. "Look at me, Elena." This time, his voice was not a command. It was quieter than that. Worse than that. It sounded like he understood exactly what was happening inside her, like he knew fear had crawled beneath her ribs and locked itself there. She forced her eyes back to him. Luca Moretti was still bleeding, still pale beneath the sharp lines of his face, still half reclined on the trauma bed, with a wound deep enough to kill most men. But he looked calmer than everyone else in the room, calmer than the nurses hiding behind the counters, calmer than the doctor frozen near the oxygen tank, calmer than Elena, whose entire body felt as if it had been split between duty and panic. "You're going into shock," she said, because medicine was the only language she had left. His mouth curved faintly. "No, you are." Anger flashed through her hard enough to steady her hands. "Then stop distracting me and let me save your life." For 1 second, something dangerous softened in his expression. Not kindness. Recognition. As if no one had spoken to him like that in years, and lived to finish the sentence. Elena leaned over him again and pressed fresh gauze against the wound under his ribs. His black shirt had been cut open, exposing hard muscle, old scars, and the brutal proof that this was not the first time violence had found his body. Or maybe he had found it. "Hold pressure here," she ordered the guard near the door. The guard looked to Luca. Elena snapped. "Do not look at him. Look at me. I'm the one keeping him alive." Silence followed. Then Luca said, "Do what she says." The guard obeyed immediately. That frightened Elena more than the gunshots. She had seen wealthy men, powerful men, men who thought their money made them untouchable. But this was different. These men did not respect Luca. They belonged to him. Outside Trauma 2, someone shouted in Italian. Another voice answered sharply. A heavy door slammed. Rain beat harder against the hospital windows, turning the night into a wall of sound. Elena worked with fast, practiced precision. She cleaned the wound, checked for an exit, demanded suction, demanded clamps, demanded someone call surgery. No one moved until Luca's eyes shifted toward them. Then everyone moved. That was when she understood the truth. The hospital was no longer a hospital. It was his territory. And somehow, impossibly, she had become the only person allowed close enough to touch him. "Elena," Dr. Webb said from behind her, voice thin with fear. "Maybe we should let their private physician handle this." Elena did not look up. "Their private physician isn't here. He might be safer with. He'll be dead in 6 minutes if everyone keeps whispering instead of helping me." Dr. Webb went quiet. Luca watched her again with that unsettling intensity, as though every word out of her mouth was being stored somewhere permanent. "You talk to everyone like that?" he asked. "Only dying men with armed friends." "I'm not dying. You're not cooperating either." His breath hitched when she pressed deeper around the wound. Pain tightened his jaw, but he did not make a sound. Not one. Elena had treated soldiers, addicts, construction workers crushed under steel, drunk fathers who cried for their daughters, teenage boys who begged for their mothers. Pain stripped most people bare. Luca's pain did not strip him. It sharpened him. That should have scared her. It did. But beneath the fear was something else she hated herself for noticing. The way his eyes stayed on her instead of the wound, the way his bloodied hand had reached for her sleeve, not because he was helpless, but because he had chosen her in a room full of people. The way the men outside seemed willing to turn the entire city into a graveyard because someone had threatened him, because someone had almost shot her. Elena shoved the thought away. "You need surgery," she said. "No." Her head snapped up. "That wasn't a suggestion. No operating rooms. You have internal bleeding. I have enemies inside this hospital. You also have a bullet inside you." His gaze darkened. "Then take it out." A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It sounded too close to hysteria. "Here? In a trauma room? With half the ER hiding and your men murdering people in the hallway?" His expression did not change. "Yes." Elena stared at him. For the first time that night, she saw something beyond the blood and danger. Calculation. He was not refusing surgery because he was reckless. He was refusing because he knew something she didn't. Her voice lowered. "Who are you?" The guard at the door shifted. Luca's eyes stayed on hers. "A man who has lived too long by knowing when a room is safe. And this room is safe?" "No." His gaze moved over her face slowly, almost painfully. "But you are." The words landed somewhere Elena was not prepared to protect. For a second, she was not in a blood-soaked trauma room. She was 8 years old in a cold apartment, listening to her mother cry behind a locked bathroom door while debt collectors pounded on the front door. She was 17, working double shifts after school because no one else was going to keep the lights on. She was 23, standing in a hospital laundry room after her first patient died, biting the inside of her cheek until it bled because crying meant weakness, and weakness meant someone would take what little you had left. Safe. No one had ever called her that before. People called her reliable, useful, strong, difficult, cold when she had to be, but never safe. "Elena?" a nurse whispered. The sound pulled her back. Luca's pulse was weakening beneath her fingers. "Fine," she said, voice tight. "You want me to do this here? Then my rules. Everyone who isn't medical leaves. Your men stay outside that door. Nobody fires a gun unless someone comes through it with one. If you move, argue, or try to intimidate my staff, I will sedate you so hard you wake up next Christmas." A faint smile touched Luca's mouth. There she is. Elena hated the warmth that rose in her face. "Don't flirt while bleeding internally." "I wasn't flirting." "You were." His eyes lowered briefly to her mouth. "Then you'd know." The room went too still. Elena looked away first. She hated that too. For the next 40 minutes the world shrank to blood, steel, breath, and Luca Moretti refusing to die. Elena worked under emergency lights while rain flashed against the windows and men with guns stood outside like shadows guarding a chapel. She removed the bullet with Dr. Webb assisting in silence. She stitched torn tissue. She packed the wound. She pushed fluids. She barked orders until her voice went rough. Luca never screamed. Once, when the pain became too much, his hand reached for the side of the bed. Elena caught it without thinking. His fingers closed around hers. Hard, possessive, human. For a moment, the most dangerous man she had ever touched held her hand like it was the only thing keeping him anchored to the world. She told herself not to feel it. She failed. When it was over, Luca lay pale and still beneath clean bandages, his breathing shallow but steady. The bullet sat in a metal tray beside him, small and ugly beneath the lights. Elena peeled off her gloves with shaking hands. "He needs monitoring," she said. "Antibiotics, blood, rest." One of his men stepped forward. "We'll move him." "No, you won't." The guard looked offended. Elena was too exhausted to be afraid. "He moves now. He tears those stitches and bleeds out in your expensive car. He stays here." The guard opened his mouth. Luca spoke without opening his eyes. She said, "I stay." The guard shut his mouth. Elena exhaled slowly. Then she stepped out of trauma 2 and saw what remained of the hallway. The bodies were gone. That was somehow worse. The blood had been wiped from the floor in long, wet streaks. A shattered glass panel had been covered with a sheet. 2 men she had never seen before stood near the nurse's station, calm and silent, pretending they were not guarding every exit. The ER staff avoided her eyes. That hurt more than she expected. An hour ago she had been one of them. Now they looked at her as if violence had marked her. As if Luca's blood on her scrubs had changed what she was. Elena walked to the staff bathroom, locked the door, and gripped the sink until her knuckles went white. Only then did she shake. Not delicate trembling. Not pretty fear. Her whole body broke with it. She turned on the faucet to cover the sound and pressed her fist against her mouth. She wanted to go home. The thought came so suddenly it almost made her laugh. Home. A one-bedroom apartment with a leaking kitchen faucet, a dead plant by the window, 3 overdue bills under a magnet on the fridge, and a neighbor who played the television too loud every night. No one waiting. No one asking if she had eaten. No one noticing when she came in after a 30-hour shift and fell asleep on the couch without taking off her shoes. That was home. Lonely but hers. Quiet but safe. Except now, she was not sure anything was safe. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with wet fingers. Unknown number. For a moment she thought it might be the hospital. Or maybe some emergency alert. Maybe the police. Then she read the message. You saved the wrong man. Her blood went cold. A second message appeared. Now we know your name. Elena stared at the screen, breath trapped in her chest. Then a third message arrived. Tell Luca Moretti the next bullet is for his nurse. Elena did not leave the bathroom for 7 minutes. She counted them by the pulse beating in her throat. 7 minutes of standing under the harsh fluorescent light, with her phone in one hand and the sink cutting into her palm, while rain hammered the hospital windows like fingers trying to get inside. You saved the wrong man. Now we know your name. Tell Luca Moretti the next bullet is for his nurse. His nurse. The words made her stomach turn. She was not his anything. She was a nurse who had done her job. She had stopped a man from dying because that was what she did, because her hands knew how to fight death even when her mind screamed to run. She had not chosen a side. She had not agreed to become part of whatever nightmare had followed Luca Moretti through the ER doors. But the message did not care about truth. Men like that never did. Elena splashed cold water on her face, dried it with a paper towel, and stared at herself in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, loose strands of brown hair escaping her bun, blood still at the edge of her jaw, a thin red line she had missed. She rubbed it away until her skin stung. Then she unlocked the bathroom door. The hallway outside was too quiet. 2 of Luca's men stood near Trauma 2. 1 at the main corridor, 1 by the elevators. Their stillness made the entire ER feel smaller, like the hospital had become a cage built from white walls and polished floors. A security guard from the hospital stood nearby, but he looked useless beside them, soft around the middle, nervous. One hand resting on a radio he clearly did not trust. Elena slipped her phone into her scrub pocket and walked toward the nurse's station. Carter. Dr. Webb's voice stopped her. He stood beside the supply room with his arms folded, pale face pulled tight with anger. He was trying to dress up as authority. Behind him, 2 nurses pretended not to listen. Elena was too tired for politics. What? His eyes flicked toward Luca's guards, then back to her. My office. Now. She followed him because she already knew refusing would make it worse. Dr. Webb shut the office door too hard. The small room smelled like stale coffee and hand sanitizer. A framed certificate hung crooked behind his desk. Elena had noticed that crooked frame every time she had been called in here for taking too long with uninsured patients, for arguing with residents who ignored pain reports, for creating tension when she refused to cover for lazy doctors. Tonight, the frame looked like the only honest thing in the room. Dr. Webb turned on her. Do you have any idea what you've done? Elena stared at him. Saved a trauma patient? You brought a criminal war into this hospital. He walked in bleeding, and you should have stabilized him and transferred him to police custody. She let out a short, humorless laugh. Police custody? The police weren't here. They're coming. Then maybe you should ask them why it took gunfire in an ER to get their attention. His jaw tightened. Elena, this is serious. No, Dr. Webb. Serious is a man bleeding out on my table while half the staff froze. Serious is a gunman firing inside a trauma room. Serious is someone texting me that the next bullet is mine. The moment the words left her mouth, the office changed. Dr. Webb's anger faltered. What did you say? Elena pulled out her phone and placed it on the desk. He read the messages. For 2 seconds, he looked almost human. Then fear came back, and fear made him cruel. This is exactly why you need to distance yourself from him. I didn't ask him to grab my wrist. I didn't ask armed men to follow him here. But you did take control of his treatment. I was the only one doing my job. His face flushed. That attitude is why people have problems with you. There it was. The old familiar blade. Elena looked at him, suddenly so exhausted she felt hollow. People have problems with me because I don't smile when they fail patients. Dr. Webb stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think being stubborn makes you strong. It doesn't. It makes you reckless. And now your recklessness has put everyone here at risk. Elena's fingers curled at her sides. 1,000 answers rose in her throat. Sharp ones, true ones, the kind that would cost her shifts, references, maybe the job itself. But rent was due in 9 days. Her mother's old medical debt still took money from her account every month like a ghost that refused to die. Her car needed repairs. Her landlord had stopped pretending patience was free. So Elena swallowed the truth. That was what poor people learned early. Pride was expensive. Silence was survival. Dr. Webb took her silence as victory. You are relieved from trauma too. Her head snapped up. What? You heard me. Luca Moretti is my patient. He is a liability. He is unstable. He has private men who can babysit him. He needs medical monitoring. And I need my hospital not turned into a battlefield because a nurse developed some kind of savior complex. Elena went very still. The words hit somewhere deeper than they should have. Savior complex. As if she wanted this. As if she had dreamed of blood on her hands and threats in her phone. As if she had ever wanted to be seen by a man like Luca Moretti, with eyes that felt too dangerous and too understanding at the same time. You're assigning someone else? She asked quietly. Yes. Who? Madison. Elena almost laughed again. Madison Hale had been a nurse for 11 months, still panicked during chest tubes, still looked for approval before pushing basic medication, still cried after difficult families yelled at her. She was kind, but she was not ready for Luca. Madison can't manage him if he crashes. Then Dr. Patel will supervise. Dr. Patel left at midnight. Dr. Webb hesitated. Elena saw it. He didn't know. He had been hiding in his office during the shooting, and now he wanted to punish her for not doing the same. Her voice dropped. You're not making a medical decision, you're making a scared one. His face hardened. Go home, Carter. The room went silent. Elena stared at him. My shift isn't over. It is now. You're suspending me? I'm protecting this hospital. No, she said, voice shaking despite herself. You're protecting yourself. Dr. Webb opened the door. Go home before I write this up formally. The nurses at the station looked away when Elena stepped out. That was the part that almost broke her. Not Dr. Webb. She expected men like him to use power like a shield. Not the guards, not the blood, not even the threat in her phone. It was the way everyone looked away, as if she had become inconvenient. As if courage was embarrassing once the danger passed. Madison stood near the supply cart holding a chart to her chest, eyes wide with guilt. Elena, she whispered. I'm sorry. He told me. It's fine. It's not. I don't know if I can. Keep him on fluids. Check his blood pressure every 15 minutes. Watch for fever, confusion, increased abdominal rigidity. If the dressing soaks through, don't wait for Webb. Call surgery again. Directly. Madison nodded quickly, blinking too much. And don't let his men scare you, Elena added. Madison looked toward trauma too. They already do. Elena wanted to tell her that fear was normal. That bravery was not the absence of it. That sometimes your hands shook and you worked anyway. But she had no strength left to teach anyone how to survive. So she walked to the locker room. Her locker door stuck, as always. She pulled twice before it opened with a metallic groan. Inside were a spare hoodie, cheap sneakers, a protein bar she had forgotten about, and a photo strip taped to the back wall. Elena and her mother, 7 years ago. Before the chemo failed. Before the bills became a second body in the apartment. Before Elena learned that grief did not end. It just became furniture. Something you walked around every day. Her mother was laughing in the photo. Elena had been 19 then, hair longer, face softer, still foolish enough to believe that if she worked hard enough, life would eventually become gentle. She touched the edge of the photo with her thumb. Then she changed out of her blood-stained scrub top, shoved it into a plastic bag and pulled on her hoodie. When she stepped outside the locker room, one of Luca's guards was waiting. Tall, dark beard. Scar through his left eyebrow. The same man who had obeyed her during the procedure. You're leaving, he said. It was not a question. I was told to. By who? My supervisor. His expression did not change, but something cold moved behind his eyes. Mr. Moretti did not approve that. Elena stared at him. Mr. Moretti is my patient, not my employer. He asked for you. I'm sure he did. You should come. No. The guard blinked once, as if the word was unfamiliar. Elena stepped around him. He moved into her path. Not aggressively. Worse. Politely, like a locked door pretending to be furniture. "Elena Carter," he said, voice low. "It is not safe for you to leave alone." Her heart kicked once. She thought of the text. Then she thought of Dr. Webb telling her to go home, because fear was easier when it wore a name tag. "I'm not staying here because your boss says so." He is not saying it as a boss. Then what is he saying it as? The guard's eyes flicked toward Trauma 2. For the first time, uncertainty touched his face. As a man who knows what happens next, Elena hated that the words made her afraid. She hated even more that they made sense. But exhaustion was turning her fear into anger, and anger had always been easier to carry. "Tell Mr. Moretti, I'm not one of his men." "No," the guard said quietly, "you are not." Something in his tone made her look at him. Respect. Not soft, not friendly, but real. "You saved his life," he said. "That means there are men tonight who will think hurting you is the same as hurting him." Elena's throat tightened. "I didn't ask for that. No one ever asks to matter to Luca Moretti." Before she could answer, the trauma room door opened. Madison stumbled out. "Elena." The sound of her name was wrong. Too thin. Too scared. Elena was moving before Madison finished speaking. "What happened?" "He's asking for you. His blood pressure dropped and he won't let me change the dressing. He keeps saying..." "Saying what?" Madison looked behind her, face pale. "He says there's a traitor in the hospital." The hallway seemed to tilt. Elena pushed past her into Trauma 2. Luca was awake. Too awake. His skin was pale, sweat at his temple, one hand pressed over the bandage beneath his ribs. Fresh blood had seeped through the gauze. The monitors showed what Elena already knew from the tension in the room. His body was fighting hard to stay alive. But his eyes were clear. Brutally clear. They found Elena the moment she entered. "There you are," he said. Her anger returned instantly, because it was safer than the relief that tried to follow. "I was sent home." "I know. Did you have something to do with that?" "If I had, you would not have made it to the locker room." The answer should not have reassured her. It did anyway. She crossed to his side and pulled back the edge of the dressing. "You're bleeding again." "I told them not to touch it." "That was stupid." "I was waiting for you." "That was stupider." His mouth curved faintly, but pain dragged it away. Elena pressed fresh gauze down. He inhaled sharply. "You don't get to bleed dramatically every time you want attention," she muttered. His eyes stayed on hers. "I already have your attention." Heat moved through the space between them, sudden and unwanted. The guard near the door looked away. Elena focused on the wound. "Madison said you think there's a traitor here." "I know there is." "In your organization?" "In this hospital." Her hands paused. Luca's voice lowered. "The men who came tonight knew where I was going before my own people did." "That doesn't mean hospital staff were involved." "No." His gaze sharpened. "But the message you received does." Elena went cold. She looked up slowly. "How do you know about that?" The room fell silent. Luca did not look away. Elena stepped back from the bed. "How do you know about my phone?" His jaw tightened, not with guilt, with restraint. "Because one of my men monitors threats." "To me?" "To anyone near me. I was near you for 2 hours. And now they know your name." Elena stared at him, shock turning hot and ugly. "You had someone watching my phone?" "No." "Then how?" "The same number sent a message to one of mine." "What did it say?" Luca's expression went dark enough to change the air in the room. The guard by the door shifted. Elena's voice dropped. "What did it say, Luca?" For a long moment he said nothing. Then he reached to the side table and picked up a phone that did not look like his. Black case, cracked corner, disposable. He handed it to her. Elena looked down. There was one message on the screen. "We'll cut the nurse open and send her back to you in pieces." Her breath stopped. The phone blurred in her hand. Luca's voice came through the silence, low and controlled, but something savage lived under it. "That is why you are not going home alone." Elena wanted to speak. Nothing came out. She had spent her whole life being practical because panic did not pay bills. Panic did not fix leaking faucets or final notices or funeral invoices. Panic did not help dying patients breathe. But this was not panic. This was the realization that an invisible hand had reached into her ordinary, lonely life and wrapped fingers around her throat. Her apartment, her car, her name. Everything suddenly felt exposed. Dr. Webb appeared at the doorway, face flushed with irritation. "Carter, I told you to leave." Luca turned his head slowly. The entire room seemed to lower in temperature. Dr. Webb faltered. "You Luca said. One word. Soft as a blade being drawn. Dr. Webb swallowed. Mr. Moretti, I'm responsible for hospital protocol. No, Luca said. You are responsible for removing the only person I trust from this room after my enemies threatened her. Dr. Webb's eyes widened. I didn't know. You knew she was threatened. Elena looked at Webb. His silence answered before his mouth did. Luca's men went still. Elena felt something inside her crack, not loudly, not dramatically, just a small final break in a place already held together by exhaustion. You knew, she said. Dr. Webb's face tightened. I was trying to de-escalate. You sent me into the parking lot. I sent you home, after I told you someone threatened to shoot me. His eyes darted toward Luca's guards. Elena, be careful what you imply. Luca laughed once. It was quiet. No humor in it. Dr. Webb's face drained of color. Careful, Luca repeated. That is what men say when they are afraid a woman is about to tell the truth. Elena looked at him then. Really looked. The dangerous calm. The blood beneath the bandage. The violence waiting behind his eyes like a storm behind glass. She should have felt only fear. But beneath it, something else stirred. Not attraction exactly. Not trust. Something more dangerous than both. The feeling of being defended by someone who did not require her to become smaller first. Dr. Webb straightened, trying to recover authority. This is inappropriate. I'm calling hospital administration. No, Luca said. Webb froze. You are calling the police, Luca continued. You are giving them the security footage. You are reporting the threat made against Nurse Carter. And then you are leaving her alone. I don't take orders from... One of Luca's men stepped forward. Luca lifted a hand. The man stopped instantly. Luca's eyes remained on Webb. You should be grateful I am injured. Dr. Webb looked at Elena as if she were the cause of his humiliation. There it was again. Blame. Always easier to hand to the woman who survived the thing everyone else feared. Elena, he said tightly, you are making a mistake. Before she could answer, Luca spoke. No. His voice softened, but somehow became more lethal. The mistake was yours. The room went quiet. Dr. Webb left without another word. Elena stood motionless beside the bed, the disposable phone still in her hand. She could feel every eye on her. Madison, the guards, Luca. For once, no one was looking away. That should have comforted her. Instead, it made her want to disappear. Luca watched her with an expression she could not read. You're angry, he said. She gave a breathless laugh. That's what you picked up on? At him, at everyone. At me? Her eyes snapped to his. Yes. Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Or the closest thing a man like him allowed himself to feel. You should be. Elena's anger slipped, just enough to reveal the fear beneath it. My life was boring yesterday. No, Luca said quietly. It was lonely. The words struck too close. Her throat tightened. You don't know anything about my life. I know you have no emergency contact listed except a woman who died 3 years ago. Elena went still. The room vanished again. Her voice turned cold. How dare you? Luca's expression did not change, but his eyes did. I needed to know who to protect. You had no right. I know. That stopped her. Not because it excused him. Because he didn't try to. Elena looked away before the tears could betray her. She had not cried when her mother died. Not in front of anyone. She had arranged the funeral, signed paperwork, returned to work 4 days later, and let grief become something private and starving. Now this man, this criminal, this stranger had dragged her loneliness into the light like evidence. I don't need protection, she said, but it sounded weak even to her. Luca's voice lowered. Yes, you do. She shook her head. No, I need my life back. For the first time, Luca said nothing. The monitors beeped steadily. Rain moved over the glass. Somewhere outside, sirens finally began to approach, late and useless. Elena placed the disposable phone on the tray beside his bullet. I'm not going home with your men, she said. I'm not hiding in some black SUV. I'm not becoming part of whatever war you brought here. Luca watched her carefully. What are you going to do? She forced herself to stand straighter. I'm going to file a police report. I'm going to finish my shift. Then I'm going home to lock my door like a normal person. His eyes darkened. You will not make it to your door. The certainty in his voice chilled her. Elena leaned closer, anger rising again because fear was too unbearable. You don't get to decide where I go. No, he said softly. But they already decided where you die. The words hit the room like a gunshot. Madison covered her mouth. Elena stared at him, unable to move. Then Luca reached for her wrist again. This time his grip was weak, not possessive. Desperate in a way he clearly hated. "Elena," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a warning and a plea at once. "There are three kinds of people in my world: the ones who run, the ones who kill, and the ones everyone kills to own." His thumb moved once against her pulse. "You just became the third." Before she could pull away, the lights went out. Not flickered. Died. The entire ER dropped into darkness. For half a second there was only rain, breathing, and the high thin scream of a monitor switching to backup power. Then a voice came over the hospital intercom. Distorted. "Calm. Male. Elena Carter." Her blood turned to ice. Every guard in the room drew a weapon. The intercom crackled again. "You have 10 minutes to bring Luca Moretti to the ambulance bay." A pause. Then the voice smiled through the speakers. "Or we start killing nurses." The darkness lasted long enough for Elena to hear her own heartbeat. Not as a metaphor. She heard it. A violent, uneven pounding inside her ears, louder than the rain, louder than the monitors, louder than the sudden movement of Luca's men drawing weapons around the trauma bed. Elena Carter. Her name still seemed to hang in the air after the intercom cut out, stripped of humanity by the static, turned into something public and hunted. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Then the hospital emergency lights snapped on. Red. Jing. Unforgiving. The trauma room changed beneath them. Luca's pale face became all sharp shadows and blood-warm light. Madison stood near the wall with both hands pressed against her mouth. The guards looked less like men now, and more like pieces of a weapon waiting to fire. Elena's first instinct was not heroic. It was small and human. She wanted her mother. The thought struck so suddenly, so painfully, that her breath caught. She wanted to be 8 years old again with her mother's hand over her hair, hearing the impossible promise that everything would be okay. But her mother was gone, and everything was not okay. "Elena." Luca's voice cut through the panic. She looked down. He was trying to sit up. Blood immediately darkened the edge of his bandage. "No." She shoved a hand against his shoulder. "Don't move." "They're inside the system," he said. "You're bleeding. They have access to the intercom. Power. Security doors." His eyes moved to one of his men. "Marco." The scarred guard stepped forward. "Already checking. Lock this floor. They may have already overridden it. Then override them." Marco disappeared into the hall. Elena stared at Luca. "You knew this could happen." His silence answered first. The emergency light washed over his face, turning his eyes almost black. "I knew they would come again." "Again?" Her voice sharpened. "You mean this wasn't the attack?" "No." The room seemed to tilt around her. The gunmen, the bodies, the threats, the blood on the floor. All of that had only been the first knock at the door. Madison began crying softly behind her. Elena looked toward her, and the nurse's fear broke something open inside her, not because Madison was weak, because Madison was young. Because there were other nurses on this floor, people Elena had complained with, worked beside, borrowed pens from, shared vending machine dinners with during double shifts. People who had looked away from her an hour ago. People who might die because someone had spoken her name over an intercom. Luca saw the shift in her face. "No," he said. She turned back to him. "No what?" "No to whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking people are about to get killed. I know. You don't sound very upset." His gaze hardened. "Because panic wastes seconds. And what does murder waste?" The words came out before she could stop them. A heavy silence fell. One of Luca's guards looked at her as if no one had ever spoken to him that way. Madison went still. Luca only watched Elena. The dangerous thing about him was not that anger changed him. It was that it didn't. His voice lowered. "You think I don't care if innocent people die? I think men like you decide who counts as innocent." Pain flickered across his face, quick and almost invisible. Then it vanished. "You're right." Elena was not prepared for the answer. Luca gripped the edge of the bed, breathing carefully through the pain. "For most of my life I counted bodies by usefulness. Enemy, ally, witness, liability. That is the mathematics of my world." Her stomach twisted. "That's disgusting." "Yes." Again, no defense. No excuse. Only the terrible honesty of a man who had long ago stopped pretending he was clean. But tonight, he continued, eyes locked on hers, They used your name. The air tightened. And that changes the math? His gaze moved over her face with a restrained intensity that made her skin heat despite the fear. Yes, Madison whispered. Why? Elena looked at her. So did Luca. For a second, he said nothing. Then his attention returned to Elena, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. Because she saved my life when every intelligent person in this hospital wanted to step away from the blood. Elena's throat tightened. That doesn't make me special. No, Luca said. It makes you dangerous. She stared at him. A scream split the hallway. Madison flinched hard. Elena moved toward the door, but one of Luca's men blocked her. Move, she snapped. No one leaves this room. That was a nurse. Exactly. Elena tried to push around him. He did not budge. Her fear ignited into fury. I said move. The guard looked to Luca. Luca's jaw tightened. Let her pass. Boss. Let her pass. The guard stepped aside, but Luca's voice followed her. Elena. She looked back. His eyes were cold with warning, and something underneath it that looked dangerously close to fear. Do not be brave alone. She had no answer to that. She stepped into the hallway. The emergency lights strobed red along the walls. Nurses moved in frightened clusters near the station. A patient was crying behind a curtain. Somewhere down the corridor, someone pounded on a locked door. Then Elena saw blood. Not much. A smear across the floor near the medication room. She ran. Who screamed? She demanded. No one answered. Everyone looked at her like her name had become a curse. Then a trembling nurse pointed toward the break room. Elena pushed the door open. Inside, Dr. Webb stood with his back against the vending machine, face gray, hands raised. A man in a paramedic jacket held a knife to Madison's friend Clara, a night shift nurse with 2 kids and a laugh too loud for quiet rooms. Clara's eyes were wide and wet. The blade pressed just below her jaw. The paramedic looked wrong. Too still. Too calm. Not hospital tired. Not emergency focused. Predatory. Elena Carter, he said. Her body went cold. Behind her, Luca's men raised their guns. The knife pressed harder into Clara's skin. One shot, the man said, and she opens. Elena lifted both hands slowly. No one shoot. The guard beside her whispered, Step back. The man smiled. No, let her come in. Luca's voice sounded from behind her, low and lethal. Elena. She turned sharply. He was there. Standing. Barely. One hand braced against the wall, bandage bleeding through his shirt, face pale with the effort of staying upright. Another guard hovered near him, furious and terrified all at once. Elena's anger nearly swallowed her fear. Are you insane? Yes, Luca said. But not about this. The man with the knife laughed. Luca Moretti, the great devil himself. Bleeding in a hospital hallway for a nurse. Luca's eyes never left the man's face. Take the knife off her. Or what? You'll limp at me. No, Luca said softly. I'll remember you had hands. The man's smile flickered. Only for a second. But Elena saw it. So did Luca. You're not one of Santoro's, Luca said. The man's expression hardened. Elena looked between them. Santoro? Luca ignored her. You move like police, he continued. But you don't speak like them. The man's jaw tightened. Dr. Webb whispered, Please, just do what he wants. Elena turned on him with disbelief. He has a knife to Clara's throat. He wants Moretti, Webb said, voice shaking. Give him Moretti. A horrible silence filled the room. Clara began to sob. The man with the knife smiled again. Dr. Smart. Elena stared at Webb. Something inside her settled. Not softened. Settled. For years, she had thought cowardice was loud. Men shouting, men threatening, men slamming fists into doors. But she had been wrong. Cowardice could also wear a white coat and speak calmly while offering someone else's life for its own comfort. Luca looked at Webb with dead eyes. You have made yourself very easy to hate. Webb shrank back. The knife man pressed Clara closer to him. Enough. Moretti comes with me, or the nurse dies. Elena stepped forward. Elena, Luca warned. She did not stop. The man's eyes shifted to her. Careful. I am being careful. You don't look scared enough. I'm a nurse in an ER at 3 a.m, she said. I've been scared for years. The words surprised even her. But once they began, she could not stop them. I've been scared of rent, scared of bills, scared of phone calls from collection agencies, Scared of patients dying because someone above me cared more about liability than people. Scared of going home to an apartment where nobody would know if I didn't wake up. The man's smile faded. Luca went very still. Elena took another step. So, if you're trying to terrify me into stupidity, you're late. Clara's eyes locked on hers. Elena looked at her, not the knife. Clara, breathe slowly. I can't. Yes, you can. In through your nose. Look at me. The man snarled. Stop talking to her. Elena's gaze stayed on Clara. Look at me. Clara inhaled shakily. The knife shifted half an inch. Luca moved. Not toward the man. Toward Elena. And suddenly she understood. The man's attention had fractured. Only a little. But enough. Elena grabbed the coffee pot from the counter and threw the hot contents into the man's face. He screamed. Clara dropped. Gunfire exploded once. Only once. The man hit the break room floor. Elena froze, chest heaving. Clara scrambled toward her, sobbing. Elena caught her and pulled her close, one hand over the back of her head, the other shaking violently. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Luca's body finally gave out. He collapsed against the wall. Elena released Clara and ran to him. Damn it, Luca. He slid down toward the floor, leaving a dark streak of blood on the wall. His guard caught him before he fully fell. Elena dropped to her knees in front of him, pressing both hands to his wound. You tore the stitches. Luca looked at her through pain-glazed eyes. You saved her. You almost died again. She was alive to notice. Elena wanted to hate him for making her feel something in the middle of all this. Instead, her hands pressed harder against his bleeding side. Get him back to trauma 2, she shouted. The guards moved instantly. As they lifted him, his bloody hand caught hers. Weakly, Elena. What? His voice was rough. You were wrong. This is not the time. You said saving me didn't make you special. Her breath caught, even barely conscious, even losing blood. His eyes held hers with that impossible, devastating focus. It did to me. Then his hand slipped from hers, and Luca Moretti passed out. The hospital came alive after that. Police finally entered the building with weapons raised and voices too loud. Hospital administration arrived in suits over pajamas, trying to take control of a situation that had already exposed them as irrelevant. Nurses cried in supply closets. Patients were moved. Security footage was demanded. Statements were requested. Elena ignored all of it. She worked on Luca again. This time, no one told her to leave. Not Dr. Webb. Not the police. Not the hospital director who stood at the edge of the trauma room looking like he had aged 10 years in one night. Luca's men had formed a wall outside the door. But inside, Elena was the law. She reopened the wound, repaired the torn stitches, pushed blood, adjusted medication, checked his pupils, counted every breath like she had personally loaned it to him and expected repayment. By 5:04 a.m., dawn began to press weak gray light against the rain-streaked windows. Luca lived, barely. Elena stood beside his bed, numb with exhaustion, when Marco entered. He did not speak at first. He waited until she finished adjusting the IV. Then he said, "We found something." Elena looked up. Marco's face was unreadable, but his eyes held a tension she had not seen there before. What? He placed a hospital ID badge on the tray. Not hers. Not Madison's. Not Clara's. Dr. Webb's. Elena stared at it. There was blood on the clip. Marco said, "The man in the paramedic jacket entered through the staff entrance." Elena's stomach tightened. He had access? Marco nodded once. Someone let him in. She looked toward the hallway. Dr. Webb was standing near the nurse's station, speaking to a police officer, pale and sweaty under the fluorescent lights. Elena's voice was quiet. "Are you saying Webb helped them?" Marco did not answer directly. He placed a small black device beside the badge. A hospital security keycard reader. Modified. Illegal. Hidden. Elena felt the room close in around her. Marco's voice lowered. This was found in his office. Her gaze snapped back to him. For a moment she could not speak. Then Luca's voice came from the bed. Hoarse. Weak, but awake. "I told you." Elena turned. His eyes were open. Dark. Burning. Marco stepped closer. "Boss." Luca lifted one hand slightly. Marco stopped. Elena moved to Luca's side, half furious, half relieved. "You need to stop waking up dramatically." His gaze did not leave hers. Webb isn't just afraid. Elena's pulse slowed. Luca's voice dropped. He sold you. The words entered her like cold water. No. Yes. No, he's a coward, he's selfish. But he wouldn't. He gave them your full name. Your shift schedule. Your locker number. Your address. The last word destroyed the air in her lungs. Address. Her apartment. Her lonely, leaking, ordinary apartment. Luca watched her face change, and something savage moved through his expression. They were never going to wait for you to bring me outside, he said. That was theater. Elena's voice came out almost soundless. What was the real plan? Luca's jaw tightened. To make me watch them take you. The room blurred. Elena stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. The monitors beeped steadily beside her. Dawn touched the window. Somewhere outside, the hospital tried to pretend morning meant safety. It didn't. Luca reached for her hand. This time, Elena did not pull away. His fingers were cold around hers. Weak, but certain. You asked who I am, he said. Her eyes lifted to his. The room seemed to hold its breath. My name is Luca Moretti, he whispered. And the men hunting me tonight are not my enemies because I run the city. A pausa. His thumb brushed once over her knuckles. They are hunting me because I used to run them. Elena stared at him. Then he said the thing that changed everything. And 10 years ago your mother died because of one of them. Elena stopped breathing. Not because she forgot how. Because for one impossible second, her body refused to accept air from a world where Luca Moretti had just said her mother's name without saying it. The monitors beeped beside him. Rain tapped faintly against the glass. Somewhere down the hall, police radios crackled. Nurses whispered. Wheels rolled over tile. Life continued with obscene normalcy. But inside trauma, too, Elena's entire past had opened like a wound. What did you say? Her voice sounded unfamiliar. Small. Flat. Dead in places she had spent years pretending were healed. Luca watched her from the bed, pale beneath the emergency lights, his fingers still weak around hers. His grip tightened only slightly, as if he knew she might disappear if he held too hard. Elena. No. She pulled her hand away. Don't say my name like you know me. His jaw flexed. I know enough. You know nothing. I know your mother was Elena Carter. The room went silent. The name hit harder than any gunshot. Elena stepped back. Marco lowered his eyes. Even he knew this was no longer just business. You had no right to look into her, Elena whispered. I had to. No, you didn't. Yes, Luca said, voice rough. I did. Something in his tone made her hate him more, because it carried guilt. Real guilt. The kind that did not perform itself for forgiveness. The kind that sat in the body like a bullet too deep to remove. Elena shook her head slowly. My mother died from cancer. Luca did not answer. She died in a hospital bed in a charity ward with a blanket that smelled like bleach and a nurse who didn't know her name until I wrote it on the whiteboard myself. Still, Luca said nothing. She lost her hair, her weight, her voice. She was in pain for months. Elena's eyes burned, but no tears fell. So unless your enemies were hiding in her bones, you don't get to bring her into this. Luca closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the darkness inside them was older than the night around them. Her cancer was real. Elena's stomach turned. But the treatment delay wasn't. The words made no sense. For a moment they were just sounds. Then they began to gather meaning, and the meaning was so unbearable Elena almost laughed. No. Luca said nothing. No, she repeated, sharper now. No, we applied for assistance. We waited because that's how the system works when you don't have money. Elena. No. Your mother's paperwork was buried. Stop. Her grant approval came through 7 weeks before you were told. Stop. It was redirected. Her treatment slot was given to someone else. Shut up. Her voice cracked across the room. Madison, who had been lingering near the doorway, flinched and stepped back. Elena did not care. She could not care. Because her mother's face had returned too vividly now. Not the photo strip version. Not the laughing woman taped inside Elena's locker. The real one. Thin wrists. Dry lips. Eyes too kind for what pain had done to her. The way she had apologized for needing help. The way she had held Elena's hand and whispered, I'm sorry, baby. I tried to stay. Elena had believed the world was cruel. She had built an entire life around surviving cruelty. But there was a difference between cruelty and theft. A difference between tragedy and murder that learned to wear paperwork. Her voice shook. Who? Luca looked at Marco. Marco hesitated. Who? Elena demanded. Luca answered. Vincent Santoro. The name meant nothing to her. That made it worse. A stranger had reached into her life, altered it, taken her mother's chances, and Elena had spent years blaming poverty, God, luck, herself. Santoro ran a medical charity as a front, Luca said. Money laundering, political favors, priority treatment for people useful to him. Your mother's fund was part of it. Elena stared at him. And you knew? His silence was the answer. Her face changed. Luca saw it and forced himself upright despite the pain. I found out later. When? He did not answer quickly enough. Elena felt something inside her turn cold. When, Luca? 3 years ago. The floor seemed to shift beneath her. 3 years. Her mother had been dead for 3 years. 3 years of Elena working herself numb. 3 years of bills in drawers. 3 years of eating vending machine dinners and sleeping alone, under a ceiling that leaked in winter. 3 years of thinking grief was a private debt she owed forever. And this man had known. You knew for 3 years? I didn't know who you were until tonight. Don't play with words. I'm not. You knew Santoro killed people through that charity. Yes. You knew families were destroyed. Yes. You knew my mother was one of them. Luca's face hardened with pain that had nothing to do with his wound. Yes. Elena moved before she decided to. Her hand struck his face. The sound cracked through the room. Marco stepped forward instantly. Luca lifted one hand. Marco stopped. Elena's Palmstung. Luca's head remained turned for a moment. Slowly, he looked back at her. A faint red mark burned along his cheekbone. He did not look angry. That made her want to hit him again. You don't get to protect me now, she said, voice shaking. You don't get to stand in front of bullets and look at me like I matter when you carried this around and did nothing. I did not do nothing. My mother is dead. The words ended the argument. No answer could survive them. Luca looked at her, and for the first time since she had met him, Elena saw him lose control. Not violently, not loudly. Something broke behind his eyes. I know. No, you don't. I know what it is to bury someone because of Santoro. Elena's laugh was empty. Is that supposed to make us the same? No. Good. It makes me guilty. That stopped her. Luca looked down at the blood soaking through his bandage again, as if for a moment he was seeing some older wound instead. I built part of what he became, he said. The room went too still. Elena stared at him. What? Luca's voice was low, stripped of performance. 10 years ago, Santoro was mine. The confession dropped between them like a body. Marco's face tightened, but he did not interrupt. I was younger, Luca continued, crueler, certain that power was the only language the world respected. Santoro was useful, smart, patient. He understood institutions, hospitals, charities, courts, contracts. Places men like me didn't walk into with guns because it was cleaner to own the doors. Elena's stomach twisted. You're telling me your organization helped him? I'm telling you, I gave him enough power to hurt people I never saw. Her eyes burned. That's convenient, not seeing them. Yes. Again, no defense. No escape. Just the terrible willingness to let her hate him. And she did. She hated him so much it shook through her body. But beneath it, unwanted and unforgivable, was the memory of his hand reaching for hers while he nearly died. His voice telling Webb the truth. His body dragging itself into the hallway because a nurse had screamed. His eyes when he said saving him had made her special. That was the cruelest part. Monsters were easier when they looked like monsters. Luca Moretti looked like a man bleeding for her. And maybe bleeding because of her. Elena stepped back until her shoulders hit the counter. I need air. It isn't safe. She laughed softly. Nothing is safe. You made that very clear. Luca tried to sit higher. His face tightened with pain. Elena, listen to me. No, you listen. She pointed at him, her hand trembling. You do not get to decide where I go. You do not get to assign men to me. You do not get to dig through my dead mother's life and then tell me you're the only person who can protect me from the evil you helped create. Elena. I said no. For a second, Luca looked like the command had struck him somewhere deeper than her slap. Then his expression changed. The man in the bed disappeared. The wounded patient vanished. In his place was the thing everyone else feared. Luca Moretti's voice went quiet. Marco. Marco straightened. Escort Nurse Carter to the south exit. 2 cars, 4 men. No hospital uniforms, no visible weapons unless necessary. Sweep her apartment before she enters. If she refuses the car, follow at distance. Elena stared at him. Are you serious? Luca's eyes stayed on Marco. If anyone approaches her, break both hands before asking questions. Understood. Elena crossed the room in 2 steps. I am standing right here. Luca looked at her then. Yes. And you're ordering people around me like I'm furniture. No, he said. Like you are alive and I intend to keep you that way. I hate you. The words came out fast. Too fast. They were supposed to be armor. Instead they sounded like pain. Luca absorbed them without flinching. You should. Elena's throat tightened. I don't want your guilt. You have it anyway. I don't want your men. You have them anyway. I don't want you. For the first time, the silence that followed felt alive. Luca's eyes held hers. The monitors beeped. Dawn brightened weakly behind the blinds. When he spoke, his voice was almost gentle. That one, he said. You will have to decide for yourself. Elena hated him for saying it. Hated him because some ruined, exhausted, traitorous part of her understood that he was right. She turned and walked out before he could see the tears. The hallway outside looked different in daylight. Not safer. Just exposed. The red emergency lights had been replaced by flat morning fluorescents. Police tape crossed part of the corridor. A janitor stood near a bloodstain with a mop in his hand, staring at the floor as if unsure whether cleaning it made him part of the crime. Nurses moved with hollow eyes. Patients whispered. Elena walked through all of it in her hoodie and blood-stained shoes, aware of Marco behind her, aware of 2 other men falling into step at a distance. She did not tell them to leave. That felt like defeat. She told herself she was too tired to argue. That felt like a lie. At the nurse's station, Clara caught her arm. Elena. Elena stopped. Clara's face was swollen from crying, a bandage at her throat where the knife had kissed skin but not opened it. Her eyes filled again when she saw Elena. I'm sorry. Elena blinked. For what? For being scared. The answer nearly undid her. Elena took Clara's hand and squeezed it once. You survived. That's enough. Clara swallowed hard. They said Dr. Webb is missing. Elena's body went cold. What? He was talking to police. Then administration called him upstairs, and then nobody could find him. Marco stepped closer behind Elena. His phone was already in his hand. Elena looked toward the far end of the corridor. The elevator doors were closing. For one fraction of a second she saw him. Dr. Webb. Inside the elevator. Not alone. A man in a gray maintenance uniform stood beside him, cap low, one hand gripping Webb's arm hard enough to whiten the skin. Webb's eyes met Elena's through the narrowing gap. Terrified. Then the doors shut. Marco moved. Too late. He reached the elevator and slammed the button, but the numbers were already descending. Elena's pulse spiked. Where does that go? Basement, Clara whispered. Marco turned to one of his men. Stairs now. The man ran. Marco looked at Elena. Stay here. This time Elena did not argue. Not because she was obedient, because her legs had gone weak. Webb had sold her. Webb had sent her into danger. Webb had looked away from her fear and called it protocol. But the look on his face inside that elevator had not been guilt. It had been horror. A message buzzed on Elena's phone. Her hands turned cold before she even pulled it out. Unknown number. The message contained a photo. Dr. Webb, tied to a chair in a room with concrete walls, blood running from his nose, eyes wide with terror. Below it was a single line. Ask Luca what he did to your father. Elena stared at the screen until the letters lost shape. Her father. The word felt foreign. She had not said it aloud in years. Elena Carter did not have a father in any meaningful sense. She had a man whose name appeared on a birth certificate and disappeared before memories could hold him. Her mother never spoke of him except once, late in the illness, morphine loosening the locks grief had built. He loved you in his way, she had whispered. Elena had hated that sentence. In his way. A phrase people used to make abandonment sound complicated instead of cruel. Marco's voice came from far away. Elena. She turned the phone toward him. He read it. His face changed. Not much. Enough. You know something, she said. Marco looked away. Elena stepped toward him. What do you know? I know we need to get you out of the hospital. No. Elena. No more. Her voice hardened. No more half-truths. No more men deciding what I get to survive knowing. Marco said nothing. She looked toward trauma 2. Luca. The answer was always Luca. The man who saved her from bullets and buried knives in her past. The man who knew her mother's file, her emergency contact, her grief. The man whose world seemed to have touched every broken part of her life before she ever saw his face in the rain. Elena walked back. Marco followed close behind, swearing under his breath in Italian. When she entered trauma 2, Luca was arguing with a doctor over sedation. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her face. What happened? She held up the phone. Luca looked at the photo, then the message. Every trace of color left his face. Not from blood loss. From recognition. Elena saw it. Her voice came out deadly calm. What did you do to my father? Luca closed his eyes. Just once. That was all the answer she needed to know. There was a story. A terrible one. When he opened them, something in him had changed again. Not guilt this time. Grief. Elena, he said quietly, your father's name was Daniel Vale. Was. Not is. Her chest tightened. Don't. He worked for me. The room fell silent. Elena's mouth parted, but no sound came. Luca's voice was rougher now. He was not a criminal when I found him. He was a driver. Quiet. Careful. Too honest for our world. Your mother hated that he worked near men like us. Elena shook her head. No. My mother said he left. She told you that because the truth was worse. The walls pressed in. What truth? Luca looked at Marco. Marco lowered his head. Luca's hand curled against the sheet. Daniel helped me steal evidence from Santoro. Financial records. Names. Accounts. Enough to destroy him if it reached the right people. Elena could barely hear him over the blood rushing in her ears. He betrayed Santoro? For your mother. My mother? He found out about the charity. About the delayed treatments. About Amelia's file. Luca swallowed, and for the first time, speaking seemed to cost him more than moving with a bullet inside him. He came to me because he wanted out. He wanted money to get her treatment somewhere private. He wanted protection for both of you. Elena's vision blurred. And? Luca looked at her. And I promised him he would have it. The room held its breath. Elena whispered, but he didn't. Luca's silence was merciless. No. Something inside her dropped through the floor. What happened to him? Luca's eyes turned distant, fixed on a memory that had never stopped burning. Santoro found out before we moved him. There was an ambush near the river warehouses. Daniel got the evidence out, but he didn't get out with it. Elena pressed a hand to her stomach. No. Elena. No. My mother would have known. She did. The words destroyed her. Luca continued carefully, as if every sentence might cut her open. After Daniel died, your mother took you and disappeared. She changed back to her maiden name, Carter. She refused my money, refused protection, refused everything connected to me. Elena remembered flashes. Not memories exactly. Feelings. Her mother dragging suitcases into a small apartment. Her mother crying silently over a locked drawer. Her mother flinching when black cars passed too slowly outside. Elena, Luca said, voice low. Your father did not leave you. Her knees weakened. Marco stepped forward, but she lifted a hand to stop him. Luca's eyes held hers. He died trying to save your mother. The tears came then. Silent. Hot. Violent in their quiet. Elena hated them. She had spent years turning abandonment into armor. It was easier to survive anger than longing. Easier to imagine a selfish man walking away than a brave one dying close enough to home that no one ever gave her a grave to visit. Her voice broke. Why didn't you tell us? I tried. No, you didn't. I did. You have men, money, power. Don't stand there and tell me you tried like a normal person. Luca flinched at that. Good. She wanted him to feel it. I sent people, he said. Your mother ran every time. She believed staying hidden was the only way to keep you alive. She was dying. I know. You knew she was sick? Yes. And you let her refuse help? Pain cut across his face. I had no legal claim, no trust, no right. That didn't stop you with me. His jaw tightened. No. So what changed? Luca looked at her with an honesty so brutal, it almost felt like cruelty. I lost them, he said. I am not losing you. The words struck deep. Too deep. Elena wiped her face angrily. I am not their replacement. No. I am not your redemption. No. I am not some debt you get to pay so you can sleep at night. Luca's voice dropped. I don't sleep. That should not have hurt. It did. Because she believed him. The phone buzzed again in her hand. Everyone froze. Another message. This one was a video. Elena did not want to press play. She did anyway. Dr. Webb appeared on the screen, tied to the chair, face bloodied, breathing fast. The concrete room behind him was dimly lit by a hanging bulb. A voice off-camera spoke. "Tell her." Webb sobbed. "Tell her what?" A slap cracked across the audio. Webb cried out. "Tell Elena Carter why you chose her tonight." Elena's blood went cold. Webb lifted his head, eyes swollen and wet. "I was told to assign her to trauma 2. The room went silent. Elena stopped breathing. Webb cried harder. "I didn't know they would come inside. I thought they only wanted her near him." The off-camera voice spoke again. "Why?" Webb looked directly into the camera. "Because Santoro said Luca Moretti would never leave the hospital without Daniel Vale's daughter." The video ended. Elena lowered the phone slowly. The silence after it was enormous. No one moved. No one breathed loudly. Even Luca looked stunned. Not because the plan was cruel. Because it had worked. Elena turned to him. "You didn't come here by accident. I was ambushed. But they knew you'd come here." Luca's eyes sharpened as the pieces aligned. "Yes. They knew I worked here. Yes. They sent you to me." Luca's expression darkened. "They used me as bait," Elena whispered. "No." Luca's voice was cold now. "They used both of us." Elena's mind raced backward. The rain. The doors. Luca bleeding into her arms. His hand around her wrist. Not them. "You don't know who's coming." He had not known. Not all of it. But Santoro had. Santoro had pulled strings from the dark, tying her mother, her father, Luca, Webb, the hospital, the dead men in the hallway, all of it into one trap. And Elena had been standing in the center, from the first drop of blood. Luca's voice lowered. "Elena, listen to me carefully." She looked at him. His eyes were no longer soft with guilt. They were focused. Terrifying. Alive with war. "Santoro didn't threaten you because you saved me." Her throat tightened. "He threatened me because of my father, because of what your father stole." Elena looked down at the phone. The evidence. Luca nodded slowly. "Daniel hid it before he died. Santoro has spent 10 years looking for it. I don't have it. You might. I don't. You might not know." Elena's thoughts scattered through old boxes, unpaid bills, her mother's locked drawer, papers she had never read because grief had made them too heavy. A cold realization moved through her. Her apartment, her mother's things. The drawer. The one Elena still had not opened since the funeral. Luca saw the shift in her face. "What is it?" Elena swallowed. "My mother had a lockbox." The room changed instantly. Marco reached for his phone. Luca's voice sharpened. "Where?" "At my apartment." Marco cursed. Luca threw the blanket off. Elena stepped forward. "No, absolutely not. I'm going. You are bleeding through your bandage." "Then bandage it faster." "You're insane." "Yes. You'll die. Not before I get you there." The words crashed into her chest. Elena stared at him, furious, terrified, helplessly aware that every second mattered. Santoro knew her address. Santoro knew about her father. Santoro knew about the evidence. If the lockbox was still there, then the only piece of her father that might explain everything was sitting in a cheap apartment with a broken chain lock and a window that never fully latched. Luca swung his legs over the side of the bed and nearly collapsed. Elena caught him. For a second, their bodies were too close. His forehead almost touched hers. His breathing was ragged. Her hands pressed against his chest. "You can barely stand," she whispered. His eyes lifted to hers. "But I can still kill for you." The words should have horrified her. They did, but not enough. That was what frightened her most. Marco appeared at the door. "Cars are ready." Luca looked at Elena. "Choose." She laughed once, broken and breathless. "Choose? Stay here and let police protect you from men they don't understand. Or come with me and face the truth before Santoro buries it forever." Elena thought of her mother's last apology, her father's stolen grave. Webb tied to a chair, the lockbox under her bed, a life she thought had been lonely, because no one stayed, only to discover people had died trying. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, something inside her had hardened. Not into coldness. Into decision. "Fine," she said. Luca's gaze burned into hers. "But listen to me, Moretti. I'm not going with you because I trust you. I know. I'm not forgiving you. I know. And if I find out you lied to me again, I don't care how many men fear you. I will destroy whatever is left of you myself." For the first time that morning, Luca smiled. Not with amusement, with something darker, something like pride. "There she is," he whispered. Elena grabbed fresh gauze and pressed it hard against his wound. He hissed through his teeth. "Good," she said. "You're awake." Then she looked at Marco. "Get me a surgical kit, 2 units of blood, antibiotics, and a clean shirt for him." Marco blinked. Elena's eyes narrowed. "If I'm being dragged into a mafia war before breakfast, I'm not losing my only unstable patient in the car." Marco looked to Luca. Luca's faint smile remained. "Do what she says." For the first time, Elena realized something. In Luca's world, men obeyed him. But now, because of her, they were learning to obey her too. 15 minutes later, Mercy General's south exit opened to a gray, rain-washed morning. 3 black SUVs waited by the curb. Engines running. Windows tinted. Men positioned with quiet precision around them. Elena stepped into the cold air wearing her hoodie over borrowed scrubs, her mother's name like a wound in her chest, her father's ghost at her back, and Luca Moretti bleeding beside her with one hand pressed to his side and the other hovering near her waist as if the world itself might try to take her. She looked at the cars, then at him. "This is not protection," she said. Luca's eyes scanned the rooftops, the windows, the street. "No," he answered. A gunshot cracked from somewhere above. Glass shattered behind them. Luca's arm locked around Elena and dragged her down behind the open SUV door as his men returned fire. His mouth was at her ear, breath hot, voice calm as death. "This is the beginning." The gunshot turned the morning into glass. Elena felt the SUV door shudder beside her as another bullet punched through the metal with a sharp, ugly crack. Rainwater sprayed up from the pavement. Someone shouted in Italian. Someone else returned fire, the sound deafening beneath the hospital awning. Luca's body covered hers before she understood he had moved. 1 second she was standing beside him, furious and terrified, and still trying to pretend she had control over her life. The next she was on the wet concrete with Luca Moretti above her, one arm locked around her waist, his wounded body shielding hers while bullets tore the air apart around them. "Stay down," he said against her ear. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Elena, do not move." She wanted to scream at him that he was bleeding again, that his bandage was soaked through, that she could feel the heat of his blood against her hand where she had instinctively grabbed his side. But then another bullet cracked against the SUV window, and the words died. Marco appeared at the front of the vehicle, gun raised, eyes scanning the hospital rooftop. "North building. 3rd floor." Luca looked over Elena's shoulder. 2 shooters. "I see one." "There are 2. Marco did not question him. He fired once. A dark shape disappeared from a window above the hospital entrance. Elena flinched as shattered glass rained down somewhere behind them. Luca dragged her backward toward the open SUV door. "Get in." "You first." "Elena, you are bleeding through my hand, and you are still exposed." His eyes met hers. For one insane second, even with bullets snapping through rain and armed men moving around them like shadows, the world narrowed to the space between his face and hers. His body was tense over her, protective, possessive, barely alive. She hated him. She hated him so much she could barely breathe. And still, when his hand slid behind her head to shield her from flying glass, something inside her broke in a direction that was not fear. Marco grabbed Luca under the arm. "Boss now." Luca shoved Elena into the SUV first. She landed hard against the leather seat. He followed half a second later, collapsing beside her with a sharp breath he tried to swallow. Marco slammed the door as another bullet struck the side panel. "Drive," Luca ordered. The SUV lurched forward. Elena was thrown against Luca's chest. He hissed in pain. "Sorry," she snapped automatically. "For what, being thrown by physics? For not letting you die politely in a hospital bed." His mouth curved faintly despite the blood draining from his face. "There she is. Stop saying that. Stop making it true." The SUV sped away from Mercy General, tires hissing over wet asphalt. Behind them, another vehicle followed close. A third swerved in the opposite direction, probably to draw fire or chase the shooters or do whatever violent men did when the rest of the world still needed coffee. Elena twisted toward Luca. His shirt was open beneath the coat Marco had thrown around him. The gauze under his ribs was saturated, dark red spreading through white. "Lie back." "No." "Luca." His eyes were fixed on the rear window. We may still be followed. You may still bleed out. I have bled before. Congratulations. I'm sure your body is very proud. Marco, in the front passenger seat, glanced back once. Elena caught it. What? Marco looked forward again. Nothing. No, say it. Luca's voice cut in. Marco, but Elena was already leaning forward. Say it. Marco exhaled through his nose. No one speaks to him like that. Elena pressed a clean pad hard against Luca's wound. He tensed. They should try. It's clearly good for his circulation. The driver's mouth twitched. Luca noticed. Drive faster, Matteo. Yes, boss. Elena kept pressure on the wound with both hands. Her fingers trembled, but her voice did not. I need more light. Marco switched on the overhead lamp. Too dim. Phone light. He handed her his phone without hesitation. Elena angled it over Luca's abdomen and peeled back the soaked gauze. Fresh blood welled immediately. Her stomach sank. You tore more than stitches. Luca watched her face. How bad? Bad enough that I'm angry. You have been angry since we met, and somehow you keep finding ways to innovate. His breathing roughened. For a moment his lashes lowered. Elena's fear spiked. Hey! She slapped his cheek lightly. Eyes open. His eyes lifted. Was that medical? That was personal. Another faint curve of his mouth. Good. The word came out too soft. Too intimate. Elena looked away first. She reached into the emergency kit Marco had thrown beside her. Gauze, tape, hemostatic dressing, gloves, antibiotics. No proper instruments. No sterile field. No way to fix him if the bleeding worsened. She could keep him alive for minutes. Maybe an hour. Beyond that, faith would be required. Elena had never trusted faith. Where are we going? She asked. Your apartment, Luca said. No, absolutely not. You said the lockbox is there. I also said you're bleeding internally. The lockbox matters more. It does not matter more than your life. His eyes held hers. Yes, it does. The answer landed between them with terrible weight. Elena wanted to argue, but she understood. Not emotionally. Not yet. Strategically. If Santoro had spent 10 years hunting whatever Daniel Vale had stolen, then the lockbox was more than old papers. It was leverage. Truth. Maybe the reason her mother had run. Maybe the reason her father had died. Maybe the reason Luca was willing to let his own blood fill the back seat of an SUV rather than lose it. Elena swallowed. Then we stop somewhere first. No. I need supplies. No. I need to stabilize you. No. She pressed harder into the wound. Pain flashed across his face. Yes. His jaw clenched. You enjoy that? I enjoy being listened to. Then we are both suffering. Despite everything, a breathless laugh almost escaped her. She hated that too. Marco turned slightly. There is a safe clinic 12 minutes east. Luca's gaze snapped to him. Marco did not apologize. She is right. The SUV went quiet. Luca stared at his oldest guard. And for the first time Elena saw the unspoken history between them. Not just boss and soldier, something deeper. Loyalty worn down by years of blood, old arguments, debts paid in silence. Marco held his ground. You will not make it to her apartment like this, he said. And if you die, Santoro wins twice. Luca's expression darkened. Elena leaned closer. Listen to him. His eyes shifted to her. You want the lockbox? She said. Then stay alive long enough to reach it. The SUV moved through the rainy city at dangerous speed. At last, Luca gave one short nod. Marco spoke to the driver. East Clinic. The driver changed lanes immediately. Elena resumed pressure and tried not to think about the fact that she was in a black SUV with armed men, racing away from a hospital shooting toward an illegal clinic with a mafia boss whose enemies may have destroyed her entire family. 12 hours ago, her biggest problem had been overdue rent. Now her life had become a crime scene with doors. Luca's voice cut through her thoughts. Your father was brave. Elena's hands stilled for half a second. Don't. He was. I said don't. Luca looked at her. Face pale. Eyes too clear. He drove for me for 4 months. Never asked questions he did not need answered. Never looked at things that would make him useful to kill. He was careful. Quiet. Elena forced herself to focus on the wound. Sounds like a coward. No. Her eyes flashed to his. Luca's voice lowered. Cowards survive by not caring. Daniel cared too much. The words broke through a place she had tried to seal. Elena looked down. Her father had always been a blank space, a shadow her mother refused to color in, a name Elena had trained herself not to wonder about because wondering hurt worse than anger. Daniel Valle, a driver. A man too honest for Luca's world. A man who had died trying to save them. She wanted it to be a lie. She needed it to be a lie. Because if Luca was telling the truth, then her entire childhood had been built on grief her mother had swallowed alone. Did he know about me? She asked before she could stop herself. Luca's gaze softened. Yes. Something sharp moved under her ribs. He carried a photo in his wallet. You were 2. Pink jacket, serious face. Elena remembered the photo. Not because of him. Because her mother had kept the matching copy in an envelope with old documents and never explained why seeing it made her cry. Elena turned her head toward the window, rain streaking the glass into silver lines. Stop. Luca did. That was somehow worse. The SUV turned sharply into an alley and stopped behind an unmarked brick building with blacked-out windows. Marco stepped out first. Then Matteo. Then the rear door opened. Cold rain rushed in. Elena looked at Luca. Can you walk? Yes. You are a terrible liar. His mouth tightened. I can walk enough. He could not. He made it 3 steps before his knees nearly buckled. Elena slipped under his arm instinctively. He froze at the contact. So did she. His body was heavy and burning with fever. His blood soaked through the bandage into her sleeve. His breath hit her hair once, controlled and uneven. You don't have to, he said. Yes, I do. No. Elena looked up at him. His face was close. Too close. Rain ran down his temple. For a moment, beneath the violence and secrets, she saw the man beneath the myth. Not soft. Never soft. But exhausted. Wounded. Carrying too many ghosts and refusing to set any of them down. You saved Clara, she said quietly. You shielded me. I caused the danger. Yes. Her voice trembled. You did. The truth hurt them both. Then she adjusted his arm over her shoulder. So live long enough to answer for it. The clinic door opened before they reached it. A woman in her 50s stood inside, silver hair tied back, face sharp and unimpressed. She wore a white coat over black clothing and held a surgical mask in one hand. Her eyes moved from Luca to Elena, then back to Luca. You look like hell. Luca exhaled. Good morning, Sophia. It was until you arrived. Elena blinked. The woman stepped aside. Bring him in before he decorates my doorway. Inside, the clinic looked too clean to be legal, and too expensive to be public. Stainless steel counters, private surgical bay, locked cabinets, no signs, no receptionist, no questions. Sophia pointed to the exam table. Shirt off, lie down. Luca obeyed slowly. Elena immediately moved to help. Sophia watched her. You're the nurse. Elena stiffened. Elena Carter. I know. Elena's eyes narrowed. Apparently everyone does. Sophia did not smile. That is becoming a problem. Marco shut the door behind them. Sophia cut away Luca's bloody bandage and swore under her breath. You tore the repair. He was shot at, Elena said. Sophia glanced at Luca. You always did enjoy making women work under pressure. Elena looked between them. Luca's expression closed slightly. How do you know each other? She asked. Sophia did not look up. I used to save men like him before I remembered I had a soul. Enough, Luca said. No, I like her, Elena said. Let her talk. Sophia's mouth twitched. Then her eyes dropped to Elena's blood-stained hoodie, her shaking hands, the exhaustion pressed into her face. The faint humor disappeared. You shouldn't be here. Elena laughed softly. That seems to be the theme. No. Sophia's voice lowered. I mean, he should have kept you far from this. Luca stared at the ceiling. Elena looked at him. He tried. Sophia opened a sterile tray. Not hard enough. The next hour became blood and silence. Sophia worked with the precision of someone who had stitched too many violent men, and judged all of them. Elena assisted without being asked, her body moving on training even while her mind kept circling the same terrible words. Your father's name was Daniel Vale. He worked for me. He died trying to save your mother. Santoro said Luca Moretti would never leave the hospital without Daniel Vale's daughter. Every time Luca's breathing changed, Elena noticed. Every time his eyes closed too long, she said his name. Every time she said it, his eyes opened. Sophia noticed that too. When the bleeding was finally controlled, Luca lay still beneath fresh bandages, color slightly better, but not enough. An IV ran into his arm. Pain medication waited in a syringe beside the tray. Sophia reached for it. Luca stopped her wrist. No narcotics. Sophia looked bored. You are not impressive. I need my head clear. You need to not die. Elena took the syringe from Sophia. Luca's eyes moved to her. No. Yes. I said no, and I heard you, Elena. She leaned over him, voice low enough that only he could hear. You are in pain, losing blood, and making decisions that affect my life. If you want me to trust you for even the next 20 minutes, you will stop confusing suffering with control. His eyes held hers. For a second, she thought he would refuse. Then his fingers released Sophia's wrist. Elena injected the medication slowly. Luca watched her the whole time. When she finished, his voice was rough. You keep making men obey you. No, she said. I keep asking them to be less stupid. Sophia made a quiet sound that might have been a laugh. Marco stepped into the room with a phone pressed to his ear. We swept the hospital perimeter. Shooters are gone. Police found one rifle, no prints. Luca's eyes sharpened despite the medication. Santoro doesn't leave prints. Marco nodded. Also, Webb is not in the basement. Elena turned. What do you mean? There was no basement room matching the video at Mercy General. The elevator was a misdirect. They moved him out through the service tunnel. Elena's stomach tightened. So the video was staged somewhere else? Sent live, Marco said. But not from the hospital. Luca's jaw flexed. He is already with Santoro. The room chilled. Elena should not have cared. Webb had sold her. He had given her name, her shift, her address. He had tried to push her into danger to save himself. But he was also tied to a chair somewhere, terrified, bleeding, and probably about to die. She hated that both things could be true. Sophia peeled off her gloves. You should take her somewhere safe. There is no safe, Luca said. Then somewhere fortified. No, Elena said. Everyone looked at her. She swallowed, surprised by the firmness of her own voice. My apartment first. Luca started to sit up. Sophia shoved him back down with one hand. Try that again and I'll sedate you for sport. Elena almost smiled. Almost. Luca's gaze remained on her. Too dangerous. The lockbox is there. Santoro knows it. Every minute we wait, he gets closer. Marco nodded reluctantly. She's right. Luca looked ready to murder him. Marco continued anyway. If Santoro has her address, he may already have men on the way. Then we send a team. No, Elena said. Luca's eyes returned to her. She folded her arms, though one sleeve was still stained with his blood. That lockbox belonged to my mother. If anyone opens it, it's me. Elena. No, you don't get this one. His face changed slightly. She knew he understood. This was not strategy. This was the last boundary she had left. After a long moment, he said, Fine. Sophia scoffed. Absolutely not fine. He is not walking into another firefight. He won't, Elena said. Luca's eyes narrowed. She looked at Marco. Can you take me and leave him here? No, Luca said immediately. Elena ignored him. Marco. Marco glanced at Luca, then at her. His silence was enough. Elena sighed. Of course. Luca's voice was low. Where you go, I go. That sounds romantic, until someone has to keep replacing your blood. It wasn't meant to be romantic. No? Elena looked at him. Then why does it always sound like a threat and a confession at the same time? The room went very still. Sophia looked down, hiding an expression. Marco suddenly became fascinated with his phone. Luca's eyes darkened. The medication had softened the edges of him, but not the intensity. If anything, it made the silence between them more dangerous, because he looked less able to hide behind control. Elena, he said quietly. She regretted the question immediately. Not because it was wrong, because she was afraid of the answer. Before he could speak, Marco's phone buzzed. His expression changed as he read the message. Luca noticed. What? Marco looked at Elena first. That told her enough. What? She demanded. Marco turned the phone toward Luca. Luca, read it. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Luca closed his eyes. Elena felt cold spread through her body. Tell me. Luca opened his eyes. Santoro's men are already at your apartment. Her heart dropped. My lockbox? They haven't found it yet. How do you know? Marco answered this time. One of our watchers saw them enter. 3 men, possibly 4. They are tearing the place apart. My mother's things, Elena whispered. No one moved. Her mother's sweaters in the closet, the old photo envelopes, the cracked mug she still used even though the handle had been glued twice, the lockbox under the bed. The only pieces of Amelia Carter left in the world that still smelled faintly like lavender soap and grief. Something inside Elena went quiet. Not numb. Focused. Take me there, Luca said. Marco, I swear to God, Luca, if you tell him no, I will walk there myself. Sophia looked at her shoes. Marco looked at Luca. Luca stared at Elena for a long moment. Then he said, armored car, 2 teams, rooftop coverage, no sirens, no police. Elena's lips parted. Police should be involved. They already are. What does that mean? It means I don't know which of them Santoro bought. Elena looked away. Of course. There it was again. The collapse of every system she had once believed might save ordinary people if they filled out the right forms, called the right numbers, waited in the right lines. Hospitals, charities, police, all doors, all owned by men with enough money to decide who bled. Sophia handed Elena a small black medical bag. Take this. Elena accepted it automatically. Thank you. Sophia's expression softened only slightly. Do not mistake his protection for peace. Elena glanced at Luca. I don't. Sophia looked at Luca then. And you. Do not mistake her need for protection as permission to own her. The room went silent. Luca's face did not change, but his eyes did. I know. Sophia studied him as if she did not believe him. Then she stepped aside. They left through a rear exit into the rain. This time, the convoy was larger. 4 black vehicles. Men posted at every angle. 1 car already moving ahead, another waiting behind. The city morning had begun around them, delivery trucks, commuters, umbrellas, horns, but inside the circle of Luca's men, everything felt removed from ordinary life. Like Elena had stepped through an invisible door and could no longer remember where it had been. Luca sat beside her in the second SUV, paler than before but upright, one hand resting near his wound, the other on a gun Marco had placed beside him. Elena stared at it. You plan to shoot someone while medicated and bleeding? If necessary. Your confidence is a public health issue. His eyes slid to her. There it was again. That faint, impossible pull at the corner of his mouth. You're frightened, he said. Elena looked out the window. I'm furious. Same thing sometimes. No. Fear makes you small. Anger keeps you standing. My father used to say that. She turned before she could stop herself. Luca's gaze was fixed ahead. Elena had not imagined him with a father. Luca seemed like the kind of man who had been carved into the world fully grown, already dangerous, already alone. What happened to him? Luca's expression became unreadable. Santoro happened to him. The answer was quiet. Final. Elena should have left it there. She didn't. Is that why you kept him around? Santoro? Yes. Luca's jaw tightened. My father believed power should be inherited through blood. Santoro believed it should be stolen through patience. I was young enough to think I could use him without becoming like him. And did you? Luca looked at her. No. The honesty struck harder than denial would have. Elena looked away. The SUV turned onto her street 15 minutes later. Her apartment building sat between a closed laundromat and a corner store with faded lottery posters taped to the windows. 4 floors, bricks stained by weather, fire escape rusting along the side. The place looked smaller than it had that morning. Poorer. More vulnerable. Elena stared at the second-floor window of her apartment. The curtain moved. Someone was inside. Her breath caught. Luca's hand moved to the gun. Marco spoke from the front. 3 confirmed inside. 1 rear exit. 1 possible lookout across the street. Civilians? Luca asked. 2 pedestrians. 1 shop owner. No crossfire unless clear. Elena looked at him. He noticed. What? You just cared about civilians. His eyes stayed on the building. I said you changed the math. The words moved through her in a way she did not want. The SUV stopped half a block away. Marco turned. Elena stays in the car. No, she doesn't, Elena said. Luca and Marco both spoke at once. Yes, she does. Elena opened the door. Luca caught her wrist. Not hard, but enough. She looked down at his hand, then up at his face. Let go. His eyes burned with controlled panic. Elena. My mother's lockbox, my apartment, my life. They are armed, so are your men. You are not trained. I worked ER night shift for 7 years. I know where men bleed. Marco muttered something in Italian. Luca did not release her. Elena leaned closer. I am done waiting outside doors while men decide what truth I'm allowed to touch. Something shifted in his face. That argument he could not fight. Slowly, he let go. But you stay behind me. No. Elena. I stay behind Marco. You can barely walk. Marco looked like he wanted to disappear. Luca glared at him. Marco cleared his throat. She is medically accurate. For half a second, Elena thought Luca might actually laugh. Instead, he opened his door. They moved fast. Too fast for her to think. 2 men crossed the street first. Another entered through the laundromat side door. Marco guided Elena along the building wall, one hand near his gun, body angled between her and every window. Luca came behind them despite her protests, pale and lethal in a borrowed black shirt, blood already beginning to show near his ribs. At the entrance to her building, the lock had been broken clean. Elena's stomach twisted. They climbed the stairs silently. 2nd floor. Her door stood open. Her cheap chain lock hung broken against the frame. Inside, her life had been destroyed. Elena froze at the threshold. Her couch overturned, books ripped apart, kitchen drawers emptied across the floor. Her mother's photo frame smashed, clothes dragged from the closet, mattress sliced open, papers everywhere. The apartment looked like grief had been searched with knives. Something inside Elena made a sound before she realized it was her. Luca stepped beside her. His face changed when he saw the room. No chalk. Fury. Quiet. Absolute. Marco lifted a hand, signaling the team. 2 of Luca's men entered first. Then gunfire erupted from the bedroom. Elena dropped. Marco covered her with his body as bullets tore through the wall above them. Luca fired from the doorway, controlled and precise. 1 shot. A man screamed. Another figure rushed from the kitchen, knife raised. Elena saw him before Marco did. She grabbed the nearest object from the floor, her mother's heavy ceramic vase, cracked but intact, and swung it with both hands. It hit the man's wrist with a sickening sound. The knife fell. Marco turned and struck him hard enough to drop him unconscious. Elena stood there breathing hard, broken vase pieces around her feet. Marco looked at her, then at the man, then back at her. You are becoming difficult to guard. Try keeping up, she snapped. From the bedroom, Luca's voice shouted, Clear. Silence fell. Heavy. Ringing. Elena stepped into her apartment. 1 man lay bleeding near the bedroom door. Another was slumped by the window. A 3rd was pinned beneath Luca's guard in the kitchen. Alive. For now. Luca appeared in the bedroom doorway. His face was pale, but his eyes were fixed on Elena. You're hurt. She looked down. A thin red line crossed her forearm where flying glass had cut her. It's nothing. His expression darkened. It is not nothing. She almost smiled from pure exhaustion. Now you sound like me. He crossed toward her, but his step faltered. Elena reached him before he could fall. Their hands caught each other. Blood on both of them. Again. Always. You need to sit, she said. You need that cleaned. You have a bullet wound. You have my attention. The words were quiet. Renus. Elena looked up at him. For a moment, the destroyed apartment disappeared. There was only his hand around hers, and the impossible truth that this man had brought death into her life, but he was also standing inside the wreckage like he would burn the world for touching it. Then a crash sounded from the kitchen. The captured man had been slammed against the counter by Marco. Where is it? Marco demanded. The man spat blood and laughed. You're too late. Elena's blood went cold. She pulled away from Luca and ran to the bedroom. The bed frame had been overturned. Mattress split. Closet emptied. Shoeboxes ripped open. Her mother's sweaters trampled on the floor. Elena dropped to her again and shoved clothes aside. No. The lockbox had been hidden beneath a loose floorboard under the bed. Her mother had once told her never to touch that spot. Elena had obeyed because grief had made obedience easier than curiosity. Now the floorboard was pried open. Empty. Elena stared at the hole. Her chest tightened so violently she thought she might be sick. Luca appeared behind her. He saw. His face went still. Elena stood slowly. They took it. Luca's eyes moved across the room. Maybe not everything. What does that mean? He stepped past her, scanning the bedroom with an expression so focused it became frightening. Then he stopped near the wall beside the closet. There was a photo frame on the floor. Broken glass. her mother's face beneath it. Luca crouched with difficulty and picked it up. Elena's voice sharpened. Careful. He looked at the back of the frame. Then his eyes changed. Elena. She moved closer. Behind the photo, tucked beneath the cardboard backing, was a folded piece of paper. Yellowed. Old. Untouched. Elena's hands shook as Luca gave it to her. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting hit her first. Her mother's. Babe. If you are reading this, then the past has found you. I am sorry. I tried to keep it buried because I thought silence could protect you. I was wrong. Your father did not abandon us. He died because he loved us. There is a key hidden where I kept your first shoes. It opens the second box, not the first. The first was meant to be found. Trust no hospital administrator. Trust no charity lawyer. Trust no man who says he is helping without telling you what it costs. And if Luca Moretti ever comes for you, do not trust him easily. But listen to him. He failed your father. He tried to save me. And he has been paying for both ever since. Elena's vision blurred. She read the last line twice, then a third time. He tried to save me. The room tilted. Luca stood behind her, silent. For once, he did not reach for her, did not explain, did not claim the truth for himself. Elena turned slowly. Her eyes met his. You tried to save her. His face was unreadable, but his voice was not. Yes. How? He swallowed. I found a private oncologist. Paid everything through a third party so she would not reject it. Arranged transport, papers, security. She refused the night before transfer. Why? Because Santoro sent her a photo of you at school. Elena's breath left her. Luca's eyes darkened. He told her if she disappeared again, he would take you first. Elena pressed the letter to her chest. The anger inside her did not vanish. It changed shape, became something heavier, more complicated, more painful than hate. Her mother had known. Her mother had refused help to keep her alive. Her father had died trying to save them. And Luca had been there. Somewhere in the shadows of her life. Failing, trying, losing, paying. Not innocent. Never innocent. But not the simple monster she needed him to be. Marco appeared at the bedroom door. We need to leave. Now. Luca did not look away from Elena. What happened? Marco's face was grim. The man in the kitchen talked. Elena's stomach tightened. What did he say? Marco's eyes moved to the letter in Elena's hand. The lockbox was empty when they opened it. Elena blinked. What? Marco stepped inside. They found the box. Forced it open. There was nothing inside except a pair of baby shoes and a key-shaped imprint in dust. Elena looked back at the letter. A key hidden where I kept your first shoes. Her throat went dry. The first box was meant to be found, she whispered. Luca's eyes sharpened. Elena turned toward the closet. Her mother had kept everything. Too much. Receipts from 10 years ago. Birthday cards. Hospital bracelets. Elena's first shoes had once been in a small white box on the top shelf, tied with a faded ribbon. She ran to the pile of destroyed closet items. Shoe boxes were scattered everywhere. One white box lay crushed near the dresser. Empty. Her heart sunk. Then she noticed something. A ribbon. Not on the box. Under the dresser lag. She dropped to the floor and reached beneath it, fingers stretching through dust and broken glass until they touched fabric. She pulled. A tiny pair of white baby shoes slid out. Wrapped around them was the faded ribbon. Inside one shoe was a small brass key. Elena stared at it. So did Luca. The apartment went completely still. Then Luca said, second box. Elena looked up. What second box? Before Luca could answer, the man in the kitchen began laughing. Not loudly. Not sanely. Everyone turned. He was on the floor, blood on his mouth, Marco's gun to his head. You don't even know, the man said. Luca moved into the doorway. The man smiled at him through broken teeth. Daniel Vale didn't just steal files. Luca's face hardened. What did he steal? The man's eyes shifted to Elena. He stole Santoro's insurance. Elena gripped the key so hard it bit into her palm. What does that mean? The man laughed again. It means the girl isn't just bait. Luca stepped closer. The air changed. What does that mean? Luca repeated. The man's smile widened. It means her father hid the names of every judge, doctor, senator, cop, and banker Santoro owns. A silence fell like the end of the world. Then the man looked directly at Elena. And the second box isn't evidence. His eyes gleamed. It's a death list. The words struck the room with violent clarity. A death list. Elena felt the tiny brass key burning in her hand. Luca's face had gone colder than she had ever seen it. Marco cursed softly. Outside, sirens began to wail in the distance. Too close. Too many. Luca looked toward the window. Not Urs. Marco moved instantly. We have to go. Elena looked around her destroyed apartment, at her mother's broken photos, the blood on the floor, the letter in her hand, the key from her baby shoe, the ghosts of both parents rising from every corner. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. No one moved. Luca's eyes met hers. Don't. Elena answered. Static breathed through the speaker. Then a man's voice spoke. Smooth. Olda. Almost kind. Elena Carter. Her body went ice cold. Luca's expression changed. He knew the voice. Santoro. The man who had buried her mother in paperwork. The man who had killed her father near the river. The man who had sent bullets through hospital glass and turned her name into a weapon. Elena said nothing. Santoro sighed softly. I imagine Luca has told you many touching lies. Luca reached for the phone. Elena stepped back. Santoro continued. Ask him what happens to women who become symbols in his world. Luca's eyes darkened. Elena's voice came out steady, though her hand trembled. What do you want? A pause. Then Santoro laughed gently. Your father's key. She looked down at the brass in her palm. And if I don't give it to you? Oh, sweetheart, Santoro said, voice warm with cruelty. You misunderstand. The sirens grew louder outside. Red and blue lights flickered against the bedroom wall. Santoro's voice dropped. I already own the police coming up your stairs. The line went dead. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then the building entrance exploded below them. The explosion lifted dust from the floorboards. Elena felt it in her teeth. A deep, brutal, concussive force that slammed through the old apartment building from below, rattling the windows, knocking broken picture frames from the wall, making the baby shoes jump in her hand like something alive. Then came the screams. Not from Luca's men. From neighbors. Ordinary people. Mrs. Alvarez from the first floor, who watered plants in old coffee cans, the college boy across the hall who always burned toast, the shop owner downstairs who left bags of bruised oranges by Elena's door, sometimes because he knew she worked too much to buy fruit. Elena moved toward the door. Luca caught her arm. No. They're civilians. And Santoro is counting on you running toward them. Another blast shook the stairwell. Smeller. Closer. A smoke alarm began screaming above them, shrill and endless. Marco appeared in the doorway, gun raised, face grim. Police uniforms on the stairs. Not standard entry formation. Luca's eyes went cold. Santoro's. Elena clutched the brass key so tightly the edges dug into her skin. Below them, men shouted. Police! Open up! A second voice yelled. Elena Carter, step into the hallway with your hands visible. She looked at Luca. The sound of her name in strangers' mouths had begun to feel like hands on her skin. Luca took the gun from Marco's backup holster. Elena stared. You are not fighting through a stairwell with a torn bullet wound. I am not dying in your bedroom. This is not the time for pride. It is not pride. His eyes met hers. It is location. A bullet tore through the apartment door. Elena flinched. Luca moved in front of her instantly. Marco fired twice through the wall beside the door. Not blind, not panicked, but with terrifying precision toward the angle of the shooter. Someone outside cried out and hit the floor. The hallway erupted. Gunfire tore into the apartment. Drywall exploded. Glass shattered. Elena dropped behind the overturned mattress as bullets ripped through her kitchen cabinets, shredded her cheap curtains, punched holes into the walls where her mother's photos had hung minutes ago. Luca went down beside her harder than he meant to. Pain flashed across his face. Elena grabbed his side. Blood was spreading again. Damn it. He gave her a faint, breathless look. You say that to me often, because you keep doing damnable things. Marco crawled to the bedroom threshold and signaled 2 men toward the window. Fire escape, he said. Luca shook his head. Covered. You don't know that. I would cover it. Marco looked toward the window anyway. A shadow moved across the building opposite. Then a bullet struck the metal fire escape with a sharp ringing sound. Marco ducked back. Luca's eyes flicked to Elena. Covered. She hated that he was right. The smoke alarm screamed louder. Someone in the hallway shouted, Throw the key out and the nurse lives. Elena went still. Luca turned slowly toward the sound. The look on his face was not anger. It was murder, waiting for permission. Elena's voice dropped. They know I have it. Not for long, Luca said. What does that mean? He looked at Marco. No, Elena said immediately. Luca ignored her. Decoy. Marco nodded. Elena grabbed Luca's sleeve. No. Whatever you're thinking, no. His eyes came back to hers. We give them something to chase. I am not letting one of your men die holding a fake key. Marco loaded a fresh magazine without looking up. Nurse Carter, with respect, men have died for less. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. Luca reached toward the floor and picked up a bent gold-colored key from the wreckage of her kitchen drawer. Some old spare, useless, ordinary. He pressed it into Marco's hand. Marco closed his fist around it. Elena's chest tightened. Don't. Marco looked at her then. For the first time since she had met him, his face softened. Not much. Enough. Daniel Vale saved my life once, he said. Elena froze. Luca's jaw tightened. Marco continued, quiet beneath the gunfire. River warehouses. I was 23, bleeding in the driver's seat. Your father could have left me. He did not. Elena could not speak. Marco looked toward the hall. I owed him 10 years before I met you. Then he moved. Fast. Violent. A shadow becoming action. He kicked the broken door open and threw a smoke canister into the hall. Thick white smoke burst outward, swallowing the corridor. Luca's men fired controlled shots, forcing the attackers back. Marco shouted something in Italian and ran toward the stairwell with the fake key visible in his hand. Men below screamed, "He has it!" The hallway shifted. Boots thundered after him. Elena surged forward. Luca held her back with one arm around her waist. Let me go. He knows what he's doing. He's doing it for me. Yes. She turned on him, furious and frightened and sick with helplessness. That is not okay. No, Luca said, voice rough. It is loyalty. It is death. In my world, those are often married. She stared at him like she hated him. Maybe she did. But then Luca's face tightened with pain, and his body sagged against the mattress, and hatred became fear so fast she could not defend against it. You're bleeding more. I know. Stop being calm about it. I am not calm. You look calm. His eyes lifted to hers. Elena, if I let myself feel what I feel right now, I will not be useful. The words struck her silent. Outside, gunfire moved down the stairwell. Away from them. Marco's decoy had worked. For now. Luca grabbed the edge of the bed and forced himself up. Behind the closet, he said. Elena blinked. What? Old buildings have service access. Pipes, maintenance, crawl space. This apartment doesn't. It does. How do you know? His gaze moved briefly around the room. Because Santoro would know. So I need to know first. Elena stared at him, then rushed to the closet. Behind the torn sweaters and broken boxes, the back wall looked solid. Luca limped to her side, breathing shallowly, and knocked once against the lower panel. Hollow. He shoved a hand under the edge and pulled. A hidden maintenance panel opened inward with a groan, releasing the smell of dust, rust, and old water pipes. Elena looked at him. He simply said, Go. The space inside was narrow, dark, barely tall enough to crouch through. Metal pipes ran along the wall, sweating cold condensation. Dust coated the floor in thick gray layers. Elena turned back toward the destroyed bedroom. Her mother's letter. The baby shoes. The key. She shoved the letter into her hoodie pocket, wrapped the real brass key inside one baby shoe, and tucked it beneath her shirt against her skin. Luca saw. His expression changed, but he said nothing. Another burst of gunfire cracked from below. A man screamed. Elena flinched. Luca touched her shoulder. Just once. Move. She crawled into the maintenance passage. Luca followed behind her, too large for the space, his breathing controlled but ragged. One of his men entered after him, pulling the panel closed just as footsteps thundered back into the apartment. Elena froze in the darkness. Voices moved beyond the wall. Bedroom clear. Closet. The maintenance panel shuddered as someone struck it. Elena's heart stopped. Luca pressed one hand gently over her mouth. Not hard. Not silencing her. Sharing stillness. His body was behind hers in the narrow dark, close enough that she felt every careful breath, every tremor of pain he tried to hide. His palms smelled like blood and gunpowder. Outside, another man cursed. Nothing. They went out the fire escape. Check the roof. Boots retreated. Elena did not move. Luca did not lower his hand until the last footstep faded. Then he leaned closer, his mouth near her ear. Crawl. They moved through the narrow passage in silence. Dust clung to Elena's palms. Pipes scraped her shoulder. Somewhere behind them, her apartment was being torn apart again, but this time she did not stop. She could not stop. The passage sloped downward behind the building's old plumbing, then opened into a cramped service shaft with a ladder bolted to the wall. Elena looked down. 3 floors. Dark. Basement, she whispered. Laundry room, Luca answered. You know my building better than I do. I know escape routes. Of course you do. He almost smiled. Then his hand slipped from the ladder. Elena caught his wrist. His weight nearly pulled her forward. The guard behind him grabbed his jacket, steadying him. Boss, the man whispered. I'm fine. Elena's eyes flashed. Say that again and I'll push you myself. The guard looked away quickly. Luca's mouth curved, then vanished as pain hit. Elena climbed down first. Every rung was slick with condensation. Her hands shook, but she kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant hearing Marco's voice again. Daniel Vale saved my life once. At the bottom, she dropped into the laundry room. Dim light spilled through narrow basement windows. Old machines lined the wall. A basket of someone's clothes sat abandoned near the door. The air smelled like detergent, mold, and smoke from the stairwell. Luca came down after her. Badly. Halfway down, his leg gave. He dropped the last few rungs and landed hard, nearly collapsing. Elena caught him with both arms. This time, he could not pretend it didn't hurt. A sound broke from him. Low. Rough. Human. Elena tightened her grip. Look at me. His head bowed. Luca. His eyes lifted. For 1 second, the infamous Luca Moretti looked less like a king of criminals, and more like a man being kept alive by stubbornness, and a woman who had every reason to let go. She swallowed. Do not die before I decide what to do with you. His casa held hers. Something like warmth flickered through the pain. That sounds promising. It was a threat. I know. Gunfire erupted outside the basement door. The guard with them moved ahead and peered through the cracked opening. Alley is blocked. Luca's eyes sharpened. How many? 2 at the rear exit, maybe more near the street. Elena looked around the laundry room. There had to be another way. Her eyes landed on the old coal chute, a rusted metal hatch low on the wall, half hidden behind stacked detergent boxes and a cracked plastic chair. She had never noticed it before. There, she whispered. The guard stared. That is too small. For you, Elena said. Luca followed her gaze. No. Yes. Elena. I can fit. No. They're at the doors. You need another angle. I can get outside and open the side gate. Luca's expression turned deadly. Absolutely not. Elena stepped closer, lowering her voice. People are dying upstairs. Marco is running with a fake key. Your men are pinned. You are bleeding through a second repair. This is not the time to protect your feelings. My feelings are not the issue. Then what is? His hand closed around her wrist. Fear flashed through his eyes before he could hide it. That stopped her more effectively than force would have. The truth was there. Naked. Terrifying. Luca Moretti was not afraid of dying. He was afraid of watching someone take her. Elena's anger softened at the edges, and she hated that softness because it arrived at the worst possible time. I'll be fast, she whispered. You don't know what waits outside. No, but I know what happens if we stay. His grip tightened. Elena. She leaned closer. If my father hid that list, if my mother died protecting it, then I don't get to be helpless now just because you're scared. The words struck him. Not because they were cruel. Because they were true. Slowly Luca released her. But the surrender looked like it cost him blood. He took a small pistol from his waistband and placed it in her hand. Elena froze. I don't know how to use this. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Point. Breathe. Pull if there is no other choice. Her hand shook around the grip. I'm a nurse. His voice softened. I know. The weapon felt wrong in her palm. Heavy. Ugly. Final. Elena looked at him. I save people. And today, Luca said, that may include yourself. She hated him for being right. The guard dragged the detergent boxes aside and forced the coal chute open. Cold, wet air rushed in from outside. The passage was narrow, filthy, sloping upward toward a small metal hatch that opened near the building's side alley. Elena crawled in before she lost courage. Dust scraped her elbows. Metal bit into her shoulder. The baby shoe and key pressed against her ribs like a second heartbeat. Behind her, Luca's voice followed, low and controlled. "Elena." She stopped. "Come back to me angry." Her throat tightened. She did not answer. She crawled faster. The hatch at the top was rusted shut. Elena pushed once. Nothing. Twice. Pain shot through her wrist. Voices moved outside, muffled but close. She pushed again with everything she had. The hatch gave with a groan. Rain hit her face. She slid out into the narrow side alley between her building and the laundromat, landing hard behind a row of trash bins. Her palms scraped against wet concrete. She forced herself silent. 2 men stood at the rear entrance 20 feet away. Not police. Not Luca's. Plain jackets, guns hidden low. Their attention fixed on the basement door. Elena's breath shook. The pistol was in her right hand. Her left hand searched blindly along the brick wall until it found the side gate latch. Too far. She would have to move past them. One of the men spoke into a radio. "Rear covered. If Moretti exits, shoot the nurse first." Elena went still. "Shoot the nurse first. Not take. Not threaten. Shoot." Something inside her changed. Fear did not vanish. It condensed, became cold and clear. Elena picked up a broken glass bottle from beside the trash bin and threw it down the alley in the opposite direction. It shattered loudly. Both men turned. She ran. Not gracefully. Not quietly. Fast. One man saw her. "Hey!" He raised his gun. Elena lifted Luca's pistol with both hands. "Point. Breathe. Pull if there is no other choice." She pulled. The shot cracked through the alley. The man's gun flew from his hand as he screamed, clutching his wrist. Elena stared, shocked. She had not aimed for the wrist. She had barely aimed at all. The second man lunged toward her. Before he reached her, the basement door burst open. Luca came out like a wounded animal made of rage. He slammed into the man, driving him against the brick wall. The sound was brutal. The man tried to raise a knife. Luca caught his wrist and twisted until something broke. Elena heard it. The man dropped with a scream. Luca stood over him, breathing hard, face pale with pain and fury. Then his eyes found Elena. "You fired." Her hands shook so violently the gun nearly slipped. "I didn't want to kill him." "You didn't." "I could have. But you didn't." His voice was steady, anchoring. The alley seemed to sway. Luca stepped toward her, then stopped himself, as if touching her without permission had become a line he was forcing himself not to cross. Elena looked down at the pistol, then at the man sobbing over his shattered wrist. "I'm not like you," she whispered. "No," Luca said, "you are not." Something in his voice made her look at him. There was no disappointment there. No pride in violence. Only relief. The side gate opened behind her. Marco stumbled through. Blood ran down the side of his face. His coat was torn. One arm hung wrong. But he was alive. Elena's breath broke. "Marco." He looked at the pistol in her hand. Then the man on the ground. Then Luca. "I was gone 10 minutes. She is adapting," Luca said. Marco blinked. Elena snapped. "I am not adapting." Marco looked at the wounded man again. Of course. Despite the chaos, despite everything, Elena almost laughed. Then an engine roared at the mouth of the alley. A white van swung into view. Its side door slid open. Men with rifles inside. Luca's face hardened. Down. The alley exploded with gunfire. Marco shoved Elena behind the brick corner. Luca fired back. One of his men dragged the wounded guard from the basement doorway. Bullets sparked off metal bins and shattered windows above them. Elena crouched low, hands over her head, pistol trapped uselessly between her palms. The white van rolled closer, too close. They were pinned. Then a black SUV slammed into the van from the side. The impact was violent enough to lift the van's rear wheels off the ground. Metal screamed. Glass burst outward. The van spun into a parked car, smoke hissing from its crushed engine. Luca's men poured from the SUV. The alley became war. Fast. Ugly. Controlled in some places, chaotic in others. Elena saw flashes more than scenes. Marco firing one-handed, face twisted with pain. Luca leaning against the wall, shooting only when he had to, conserving strength he did not have. A man in a police vest ripping it off as he ran. another falling into rainwater that turned pink around him. Elena crawled toward Luca. Not away. Toward him, because he was sliding down the wall. His gun lowered, his eyes unfocused. No, no, no. Eribredero. She reached him as his knees hit the ground. His wound had opened again. Blood spread beneath his shirt in a dark, widening bloom. Elena, he whispered. Don't you dare. His mouth curved weakly. You are very demanding. She pressed both hands to his side. Marco. Marco turned, saw Luca, and his expression changed to something almost childlike in fear. Boss. Pressure, Elena ordered. Now. Marco dropped beside her, replacing her hands as she dug into the medical bag Sophia had given her. Gauze, seal, clamp, nothing enough, never enough. The gunfire around them began to fade as Luca's men pushed Santoro's attackers back, but Elena barely heard it. Luca's blood was warm between her fingers. Too much. Stay with me, she said. His eyes struggled to focus on her. Elena. No, you listen to me. You don't get to drag me into my own family's murder, hand me a death list key, make me care whether you breathe, and then die in an alley like a dramatic idiot. Marco looked at her. Luca did too. Even half-conscious, his gaze sharpened. Make you care? Elena froze. The words had escaped without permission. Too late now. Rain fell between them. Gunsmoke drifted through the alley. Luca's voice dropped to something barely audible. Elena. Shut up and breathe. But his eyes had changed. Not triumphant. Not teasing. Devastated. As if her accidental confession had given him something he wanted too badly to touch. He reached up with bloodied fingers and brushed rain from her cheek. The touch was impossibly gentle. You should not care for men like me. Her throat burned. I know. His hand dropped. For a terrifying second, his eyes closed. Elena leaned over him. Luca. They opened again. Barely. Second box, he whispered. What? Not at your apartment. Elena's pulse pounded. Then where? His gaze moved toward the baby shoe tucked beneath her shirt. Daniel trusted Amelia. Amelia trusted only one place with you. Elena stared at him. Then it hit her. Not as a thought. As a memory. Her mother shaking hands on a rainy morning. A church basement. A woman in a navy coat kneeling to tie Elena's shoes. A brass plaque near the door. St. Agnes Home for Children and Families. The shelter they had lived in after her father vanished. Her mother had always called it the only place that didn't ask questions. Elena whispered, St. Agnes. Luca's eyes closed again. This time longer. Marco cursed. We need to move him. Elena looked around. The alley was a battlefield. Sirens screamed closer from every direction. Real police, fake police, Santoro's police. There was no way to know anymore. Marco grabbed Luca under one arm. Another guard grabbed the other. Elena stood, gripping the baby shoe and key under her shirt. A phone rang. Not hers. One of the dead men's phones, lying face up in rainwater near the van. The screen lit. Unknown caller. Everyone looked at it. Elena moved first. Luca, barely conscious between his men, forced out one word. No. She ignored him. She picked up the phone and answered. For a moment, there was only rain and static. Then Santoro's voice slid into the alley. So Daniel's daughter can shoot. Elena's blood went cold. He had seen. Somewhere, somehow, he was watching. She looked up at the windows, the rooftops, the ruined van. Luca's men did the same. Santoro chuckled softly. Careful, Elena. The first shot is always the hardest. After that, men like Luca convince you it was destiny. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. You sent men to my home. I sent men to retrieve what belongs to me. My father stole it from you. Your father stole a weapon he did not understand. He died because you were afraid of it. A pause. For the first time, the smoothness in Santoro's voice thinned. Daniel Vale died because he forgot what happens to drivers who imagine themselves heroes. Elena's fingers tightened around the phone. And my mother? Santoro sighed almost tenderly. Amelia was offered many chances to be sensible. Luca lifted his head, eyes burning. Elena looked at him. The wound, the blood, the rage, the old grief. Then Santoro said, You have the key. I have Dr. Webb. A coward, yes, but cowards know doors heroes miss. I don't care about Webb. No, Santoro said softly. But you care about nurses, neighbors, patients, mothers, anyone helpless enough to remind you of yourself. Elena's throat tightened. Across the alley, Mrs. Alvarez was being helped out of the building by one of Luca's men, coughing through smoke, alive but terrified. Santoro continued, "Bring me the key by sunset, or I release the list myself." Elena frowned. "Why would that hurt me?" Luca's eyes sharpened. Marco's face changed. Santoro smiled through the silence. "Luca hasn't told you." Elena looked at him. "What?" Santoro's voice dropped, warm and poisonous. "The list does not only contain the people I own, sweetheart. It contains the people who paid me." Elena looked at Luca. Luca's silence became an answer she did not want. Santoro continued, "Judges, doctors, senators, police chiefs, and Morettis." The alley went completely still. Elena's heart pounded once. "What does that mean?" "It means your father's little death list does not just destroy me. It destroys Luca, too." Luca closed his eyes. Santoro laughed softly. "Ask him whose money funded the charity that killed your mother." Elena could not move. The world narrowed to Luca's face. His pain. His guilt. His silence. "Elena," Luca said, voice barely alive. The phone slipped slightly in her hand. Santoro whispered, "Sunset. St. Agnes, come alone, or everyone she ever protected dies first." The line went dead. Rain filled the silence. Elena stood in the alley with blood on her clothes, a gun in one hand, a dead man's phone in the other, her mother's key hidden against her heart, and the man she had begun to care about looking at her like the truth might finally make her walk away. Her voice was very quiet. "Luca." He looked at her. "Tell me, Hilid." Luca's face was pale, rain-soaked, ruined by blood loss and something worse. He tried to answer. Couldn't. Elena stepped closer. "Tell me your family didn't fund Santoro's charity." His eyes held hers. The war around them faded. The sirens. The smoke. The bodies. Everything. At last, Luca whispered, "They did." Elena felt the words enter her like a knife. Then he said, "But Daniel Vale found out I was the one who signed the first transfer." Elena did not slap him this time. The alley almost seemed to wait for it. Rain fell through smoke. Sirens wailed closer. Luca's men stood around them with weapons raised, blood on their coats, faces carved into silence. Marco held Luca upright with one arm, his own blood running down his temple. Somewhere behind them, neighbors cried as they were pulled from the building. But Elena only stared at Luca. The pistol hung from her hand. The dead man's phone rested in the other. And the tiny brass key beneath her shirt suddenly felt less like inheritance and more like a verdict. "You signed it." Luca's face was gray from blood loss, but his eyes did not run from hers. "Yes." The word was almost swallowed by rain. Elena's mouth parted slightly, but nothing came out. For hours, every truth had come, with another truth hiding behind it. Her mother's death, her father's loyalty, Santoro's charity, Webb's betrayal, Luca's guilt. But this one had no shadow behind it. It stood alone, clean, unforgivable. "You funded the charity." "I funded what I was told was a medical foundation." A laugh broke from her. Not loud. "Not sane. A foundation. Elena. My mother died waiting for help from a foundation you funded. I didn't know what Santoro was using it for, but you gave him the money." Luca's jaw tightened. "Yes. And my father found out." "Yes. And then he died." The words turned the alley colder. Luca's breath hitched, but not from the wound. "Yes." Elena looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. Not the wounded patient in the rain. Not the man who dragged himself into a hallway to save Clara. Not the man who shielded her from bullets with his own body. Not the man whose touch had become dangerous because some broken part of her had begun to lean toward it. She saw the signature. The transfer. The beginning. The first stone in the avalanche that buried her family. Luca tried to step toward her, but his knees buckled. Marco caught him. Elena moved back anyway. Just one step. It was enough. Luca saw it. His expression changed. That single step hurt him more than the bullet. "Elena," he said. She shook her head. "No." The word barely had sound. Then stronger. "No." Marco looked between them, jaw tight. "We have to move." "Take him," Elena said. Luca's eyes sharpened, despite the pain. "No." She looked at Marco, not Luca. "Get him somewhere he won't bleed to death." "Elena," Luca warned. She ignored him. "I'm going to St. Agnes." "No, you are not." Her eyes finally returned to his. The force of her anger was quiet now. That made it worse. You don't get to say no to me anymore. I never did. You tried. I tried to keep you alive. You tried to keep me close because I'm the daughter of the man who died cleaning up your crime. Pain crossed his face. I was 24, and my mother was dying. The alley went silent again. No one could soften that. No excuse could touch it. Luca's voice dropped. You think I don't know? I think knowing became easy once it was too late. That struck him. Hard. Elena saw it, and for a moment the old nurse inside her, the part trained to notice pain, and move toward it, almost responded. Almost. Then she remembered her mother's last breath. Her father's hidden key. The first transfer. She turned away. Marco stepped into her path carefully. Nurse Carter, move. If you go alone, Santoro will take you. Then follow me. Luca's head lifted. Marco went still. Elena looked at him, not pleading, commanding. But he stays alive, you hear me? Whatever you have to do, keep him alive. Marco's eyes shifted to Luca. Luca gave a faint shake of his head. Elena stepped closer to Marco. You said my father saved your life. Marco's expression tightened. Yes. Then repay him by not letting this idiot die before I decide whether I hate him forever. Marco held her gaze. Something like respect settled over his face. Then he nodded once. Luca's voice cut through the rain. Marco. Marco did not move. Elena turned to Luca. For a second, the whole city seemed to vanish around them. His face was wet with rain. His body was failing. His eyes were still fixed on her, as if every road in his life ended where she stood. You cannot go to St. Agnes without me, he said. I can. Santoro wants you alone. Then he won't get what he wants. He owns police, judges, doctors, streets. Elena lifted the pistol slightly. And you taught me monsters can bleed. His eyes changed. Not fear. Not pride. Something more painful. Because she had learned that from him. Because he hated that she had needed to. Elena handed the dead man's phone to one of Luca's guards. Trace it if you can, burn it if you can't. The guard looked to Luca by instinct. Elena's voice hardened. Don't look at him, I gave the order. The guard froze. Then slowly, he took the phone. Luca watched, breathing shallowly. A strange silence passed through the alley. His men had obeyed her. Not because Luca told them to. Because she had spoken like someone who no longer expected permission. Elena turned to Marco. I need a car that doesn't look like his. No black SUV. No convoy around me where Santoro can see it coming. Marco nodded. There's a gray sedan 2 streets over. I need clothes. Plain ones. Hat. Jacket. Done. I need someone to get every neighbor out of this building and away from windows. Already moving. And I need a medical kit in the car because if he dies, I'm blaming you. Marco glanced at Luca. For the first time in the middle of the nightmare, something almost like amusement flickered in his eyes. Understood. Luca's voice was rough. You are not in charge of my men. Elena looked back. No, she said. I'm in charge of myself. They're just finally catching up. Then she walked away. Not because she was unafraid. Her legs were shaking so badly she nearly stumbled. Not because she knew what she was doing. She didn't. But fear had ruled her life quietly for years. Fear of debt, fear of grief, fear of being alone, fear of needing anyone, fear of touching the locked places her mother had left behind. Now fear had a face. Vincent Santoro. And Elena was done letting faceless things decide her life. Behind her, Luca tried to follow. He made it one step, then collapsed. Elena turned at the sound before she could stop herself. Marco caught him, lowering him to the wet pavement. Luca's eyes remained open, fixed on Elena, even as his body betrayed him. Elena, he breathed. Her name sounded like blood in his mouth. She should have kept walking. She didn't. She went back, dropped to her knees in front of him, pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse fest. Weak. Still there. You don't get to die, she said, voice breaking with anger. Not today. His hand found hers. Cold. Blood slick. Elena. What? His eyes searched her face with desperate focus. Daniel's list will destroy my family. She stared at him. My father, my uncle, men who wore my name and built hell under it. His breathing fractured. If Santoro releases it first, he controls the story. He kills witnesses. He erases proof. He makes you look insane. Daniel looked corrupt. Amelia looked bought. Elena's throat tightened. "If you find the second box," he whispered, "do not bring it to me." The words stunned her. "What?" "Do not bring it to any Moretti." Marco's face changed sharply. Luca's eyes stayed on Elena. "Bring it into the light." She searched his face. For deception, for manipulation, for another buried knife. But all she saw was a man on the edge of consciousness handing her the weapon that might destroy him. "You're telling me to expose you?" "Yes." "Your family?" "Yes." "Your empire?" A faint, broken curve touched his mouth. "My empire was built wrong." The rain fell harder. Elena's anger did not disappear. But it shifted again, painfully, unwillingly. This was the problem with Luca Moretti. He was never innocent enough to trust. Never cruel enough to hate cleanly. She leaned closer. "If I find that box and your name is in it, I won't protect you. I know. If my father died because of your signature, I will make sure the world sees it. I know. If my mother's death leads back to you, it does." The honesty broke through her sentence. Luca closed his eyes briefly, then forced them open. "Elena, it does. Not because I wanted it, not because I knew, but because I signed before I looked. I trusted power more than conscience. That is enough." Elena stared at him. Her chest hurt, not softly, like something tearing. For years, she had wanted someone to blame for her loneliness. Someone to stand in front of her and admit the world had not simply been unfair, it had been designed. Now the man was here, bleeding at her knees, refusing to run from the weight of it. And somehow that made the wound worse. She pulled her hand from his. "Then live long enough to watch me burn it down." Luca's eyes darkened. "Good." Then his body went slack. Elena's breath caught. Marco. Marco was already there. They lifted Luca into the SUV, and this time he did not protest. He was too far gone, skin cold beneath the rain, blood soaking through Sophia's careful work. Elena climbed in after him just long enough to hang another IV bag, pack pressure against the wound, and inject medication with hands that remembered procedure when her heart could not remember mercy. Marco watched her from the open door. "You still saved him." Elena did not look up. "I'm a nurse. That is not why." Her hands paused for half a second, then continued. "Get him back to Sofia." Marco nodded. "You are sure about St. Agnes?" "No." That made him look at her. Elena taped the dressing tighter, then sat back. "I'm sure about nothing. But my mother left me a key. My father left me a war. And Santoro thinks I'm still the little girl everyone hid things from." She looked out at the street, where rain blurred the siren lights into red and blue wounds. "He's wrong." Marco studied her. Then, with quiet seriousness, he reached into his jacket and handed her a small earpiece. "Encrypted. Press once to speak, twice if you need extraction. Hold down if you cannot speak." Elena took it. "And if Santoro blocks it?" Marco handed her a thin black blade in a leather sleeve. Elena starred. "I told you I'm a nurse." "I remember. Then stop handing me weapons. I am handing you choices." She looked at the blade. Then at Luca, unconscious on the seat, breath shallow, jaw tense even in darkness. Choices. For most of her life, choices had been illusions other people talked about when they had money, family, safety. Elena had survived on necessities. Work, pie, endure, repeat. Now everyone wanted her to choose. Hate or trust, run or fight, save or destroy. She took the blade. Not because she wanted to use it. Because she was done being unarmed in rooms where men discussed her fate. A gray sedan waited 2 streets away, under a dying sycamore tree. Marco assigned 2 men to follow from distance. No convoy, no obvious protection. One woman joined Elena in the driver's seat, short black hair, sharp eyes, plain denim jacket. "Name?" Elena asked. "Rosa." "You work for Luca?" "I work for Marco." Elena almost smiled. "There's a difference?" Rosa started the engine. "Today, yes." They pulled away from the curb just as Luca's SUV disappeared in the opposite direction, carrying his unconscious body back into the world that had made him. Elena watched until the vehicle vanished. Then she faced forward. St. Agnes sat on the edge of the old district, wedged between a shuttered church and a row of brick buildings softened by ivy. The shelter had been renovated since Elena last saw it. New windows, fresh paint, a small playground behind a black iron fence. A brass plaque near the steps still bore the same name, St. Agnes Home for Children and Families. For a moment, Elena was 6 again. Raincoat too big, shoes too tight. her mother gripping her hand with one hand and carrying a suitcase in the other. A woman in a navy coat kneeling in front of her. "You're safe here, little one." Elena closed her eyes, then opened them. Safe had always been temporary. Rosa parked a block away. "You sure you want to go in alone?" "No." Rosa blinked. Elena checked the pistol, hated the feel of it, and tucked it into her waistband under the jacket Marco had given her. "But I'm going anyway." Inside, St. Agnes smelled like floor polish, old wood, and soup. That nearly undid her. Not blood, not gunpowder. Soup. The ordinary kindness of it. Children's drawings lined the hallway. A receptionist looked up from the front desk, her face polite until she saw Elena's expression. "Can I help you?" Elena's voice caught. "I'm looking for Sister Margaret." The receptionist's face changed. Sister Margaret passed away 5 years ago. Elena felt the loss like a small door closing. Of course. Of course, the woman who had once tied her shoes and made her mother tea in paper cups was gone too. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said. "Were you family?" Elena shook her head. "No, we stayed here a long time ago. Amelia Carter and her daughter." The receptionist froze. Not obviously. But Elena had spent years reading micro-expressions in patients who lied about pain, spouses who lied about bruises, doctors who lied about uncertainty. This woman knew the name. Elena leaned forward slightly. "What is it?" The receptionist lowered her voice. "Wait here." She disappeared through a side door. Rosa's voice crackled softly in Elena's earpiece. "2 men across the street. Same gray coats. Not ours." Elena kept her face still. "Copy," she whispered. A moment later, an older woman emerged from the side hallway. Late 60s, brown skin, silver braid, simple cardigan, eyes too sharp for the softness of her face. She looked at Elena and stopped. "Oh," the woman whispered. Elena's chest tightened. "Do you know me?" The woman stepped closer slowly, as if approaching a ghost. "You have Amelia's eyes." The words hit deep. Elena swallowed. "My name is Elena Carter." "I know." The woman's eyes filled. "I'm Teresa. I worked nights when you and your mother stayed here." Elena had no memory of her. But grief recognized grief. Teresa reached for her hand, then stopped herself, as if she sensed Elena was no longer someone touched without permission. "Your mother said one day you might come." Elena's fingers tightened around the brass key in her pocket. "She left something here." Teresa looked toward the front windows. Her face changed. "Fear. Old practiced fear. Come with me." They moved through the hallway past the kitchen, past a room where children sat at plastic tables coloring paper suns, past a chapel with electric candles flickering beneath a wooden cross. Elena heard the front door open behind them. Rosa's voice sounded in her ear. One gray coat entered, second staying outside. Elena kept walking. Teresa led her down a narrow stairwell into the basement. Every step awakened another fragment. Her mother humming while folding donated clothes. The smell of laundry detergent. A cot against a wall. A whispered argument behind a closed door. A man's name never spoken clearly. Daniel. At the bottom of the stairs, Teresa unlocked an old records room. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls. Cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling. A single desk lamp cast warm light over dust. Teresa shut the door behind them. "Your mother came back here once," she said, "after you left." Elena turned. "When?" "Before she got very sick. She was thinner, scared, but determined." Elena's heart pressed against her ribs. "She gave me a box?" Teresa nodded. "She said if anyone came asking for it, I was to say it had burned in the old records fire." "Did anyone?" Teresa's mouth tightened. "Many." Elena closed her eyes briefly. "Of course." Teresa crossed to a filing cabinet, pulled open the bottom drawer, and removed a stack of old blankets. Beneath them was a small steel safe bolted to the floor. Elena's hand shook as she pulled out the brass key. It fit. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside was not a box. It was a bundle, wrapped in oilcloth, tied with faded blue ribbon. Elena lifted it carefully and set it on the desk. Her mother's handwriting marked the top. For Elena. When hiding is no longer enough. Elena's eyes burned. She untied the ribbon. Inside were documents, photographs, a flash drive sealed in plastic, a small cassette recorder, several bank statements, a list of names written in Daniel Vale's hand, and a letter. Elena picked it up first. "My brave girl, if you are holding this, then I failed to keep the past away from you. I am sorry." I used silence like a blanket, but silence can become a cage. I did not want you to live in mine. Your father loved you, not perfectly, not safely, but completely. He was not made for violence, Elena. That is why his courage mattered. Luca Moretti was the reason Daniel entered that world. He was also the reason Daniel's truth survived. Do not let one fact erase the other. Men are not redeemed by guilt. They are redeemed by what they do when guilt costs them everything. If Luca gives you the choice to destroy him, believe that choice. Then choose justice anyway. Elena's tears fell onto the paper. This time she did not wipe them away. Teresa stood quietly near the door. Rosa's voice crackled again. Elena, Greycoat moving downstairs. You have maybe 30 seconds. Elena folded the letter and shoved it into her jacket with the flash drive and papers. Teresa grabbed her arm. There's another exit. But the records room door opened before they could move. A man in a gray coat stepped inside with a gun in his hand. His eyes went to Elena, then to the bundle. Miss Carter, he said calmly. Mr. Santoro would like his property. Elena's hand moved toward her waistband. The man smiled. Slowly. Teresa stepped in front of Elena. No. The man sighed. Old women always mistake age for immunity. Elena's fear vanished. Not disappeared. Transformed. In one sharp motion, she grabbed the desk lamp and swung it into the man's wrist. The gun fired into the ceiling. Teresa screamed. Elena drove her knee into his stomach, then smashed the lamp across his face. He staggered. She pulled Marco's blade from its sleeve and pressed it against his throat, with both hands shaking. The man froze. So did Elena. The room went silent, except for Teresa's breathing. Rosa burst in 2 seconds later, gun raised. Her eyes took in the scene. Elena standing over the man. Blood at his throat. Documents under one arm. Tears still wet on her face. Rosa's voice was soft. Good choice. Elena did not feel good. She felt changed. Rosa tied the man's hands with zip ties and dragged him away from the door. We need to leave. Elena turned to Teresa. Come with us. Teresa shook her head. I have children upstairs. Santoro knows this place. He has known for 10 years. Teresa lifted her chin. We are still here. Elena looked at her. There was power in that. Not Luca's kind. Not violent. Something quieter and harder to kill. Teresa took Elena's face in both hands. This time, Elena let her. Your mother was so proud of you. The words broke something open. Elena closed her eyes. Teresa kissed her forehead once, then stepped back. Go. Elena ran. Through the basement corridor. Up the stairs. Past the children's drawings and the smell of soup and every ghost that had once been a place to sleep. Outside, rain had softened to mist. The second gray coat stood by the front gate. Before he moved, Rosa fired once. Not to kill. To drop him. He hit the sidewalk screaming, clutching his leg. Elena flinched but kept running. They reached the gray sedan as black vehicles turned onto the street from both directions. Not Luca's. Rosa cursed. Elena, get in. They tore away from the curb. The cars followed. The city blurred into wet concrete, traffic lights, horns, and danger. Rosa drove like someone who had made peace with death but not inconvenience. Elena clutched the bundle against her chest, her mother's letter pressed over her heart, Daniel's list beneath her fingers. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Elena answered without waiting. Santoro's voice came through, thinner now, less amused. You opened it. Elena looked at the list in her lap. Yes. You don't understand what you're holding. I think I do. No. You're holding a graveyard disguised as justice. Release it and people will die. They already did. More people. Because of you. Because of truth, Santoro said. Truth is not clean, Elena. Your father learned that too late. Luca learned it and chose power anyway. Elena's jaw tightened. And what did you choose? A pause. Then Santoro laughed softly. I chose to survive. No, Elena said. You chose to make survival cost everyone else. The line went quiet. When Santoro spoke again, his warmth was gone. Listen carefully. I have Dr. Webb. I have the original files. I have men inside every agency that document could reach. If you release it, I will bury you beneath scandal before the sun sets. Daniel will become a thief. Amelia will become a woman who sold her treatment slot. Luca will become the grieving criminal who manipulated a poor nurse into revenge. Elena's fingers tightened around the phone. And me? Santoro's voice softened again. The false kindness returned. You will become unstable, traumatized, dangerous. A nurse who fired a gun in an alley and fled a crime scene with stolen documents. Elena looked down at the pistol on the seat beside her. For a second, she saw how easy it would be. Not for him to kill her. For him to rewrite her. She had no money, no family, no public name, no one with power waiting to defend her. Only Luca. And Luca was part of the rot. That was the trap. Santoro knew it. He was counting on her needing a monster to fight a monster. Elena looked at her mother's letter again. Then choose justice anyway. She ended the call. Rosa glanced over. What did he say? He reminded me why men like him win. Rosa swerved around a truck. And? Elena pulled the flash drive from the bundle. And I remembered they only win when everyone gives the evidence to one powerful man and hopes he has a conscience. Rosa's eyes flicked toward her. What are you doing? Elena took Marco's earpiece and pressed it. Marco. Static. Then his voice. Elena? Is Luca alive? A pausa. Yes. Sofia is working. He's unconscious. Her breath eased before she could stop it. She hated that. Good, she said. Listen carefully. I have the second box. Silence on the line. Then Marco's voice turned sharp. Where are you? Being followed. Send location. No. Elena. I'm not bringing it to Luca. Another pause. This one heavier. Marco said quietly. He told you not to. Yes. And you listened? Elena looked out the rear window at the cars chasing them through the rain. I listened to my mother. Rosa's mouth curved faintly. Elena continued. I need 3 things. A journalist who can't be bought. A federal prosecutor Santoro doesn't own. And every nurse at Mercy General who's willing to speak on camera about what happened. Marco was silent for 1 second. Then another. When he spoke, something in his voice had changed. Not obedience. Allegiance. I can get you 2 of those within 20 minutes. The third? Nurses decide for themselves. Elena looked ahead. Then call Clara. Rosa cut hard into a side street, tires screaming. One of the pursuing cars clipped a parked delivery van. The other kept coming. Elena, Marco said. Santoro will respond. I know. He will attack Luca. Elena closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The part of her that still turned toward his name like a wound, seeking pressure. Then keep him alive. And you? Elena looked at Daniel's handwritten list. Names. Payments. Dates. Deaths disguised as favors. Her fear had become something else now. Not courage exactly. Courage sounded too clean. This was fury with a pulse. I'm going public. Marco exhaled once. Luca will want to be there. Luca doesn't get to decide. No, Marco said quietly. But he will want to stand beside you. Elena looked at the rain-streaked city ahead. Then he can crawl if he has to. 23 minutes later, the gray sedan pulled into the underground garage of a public library 3 districts away. It was not dramatic. That made it perfect. No black SUVs at the entrance. No men in long coats crowding the sidewalk. No obvious power. Just concrete pillars, fluorescent lights, and the smell of damp paper from the building above. Marco had moved fast. Too fast for any normal man. By the time Elena reached the private archive room upstairs, 3 people were waiting. Clara, pale but standing, bandage at her throat and phone clutched in her hand. A woman named Naomi Reed, investigative journalist, mid-40s, sharp eyes, recorder already on the table. And an older man in a plain suit who introduced himself as Assistant U.S. Attorney Nathan Bell. No entourage, no performance. Just a tired face and the careful stillness of someone who knew exactly how many powerful men would want him dead by evening. Elena placed the bundle on the table. No one touched it. Naomi looked at her. Before we begin, do you understand what this could do to your life? Elena almost laughed. My life was destroyed this morning. Nathan Bell's gaze moved over her blood-stained clothes, the cut on her arm, the bruises blooming on her wrist. And you're choosing to make a statement voluntarily? Yes. Were you coerced by Luca Moretti? No. Are you acting on his behalf? No. Do you trust him? Elena went still. The room waited. Clara looked at her gently. Elena thought of Luca unconscious under Sofia's hands. Luca admitting the signature. Luca telling her to bring the truth into the light even if it destroyed him. Luca's body over hers as bullets struck metal. Then she thought of her mother. Her father. The first transfer. No. Elena said. Naomi's pen paused. Elena lifted her eyes. I don't trust him. I believe him on some things. I hate him for others. But this isn't about trust. She pushed the list forward. This is about proof. For the next hour, Elena became something she had never been allowed to be. Not a victim. Not a nurse following orders. Not a poor woman waiting for institutions to decide if her pain qualified for help. A witness. She told the story clearly. Mercy General, the attack, Dr. Webb, the threats, her mother's delayed treatment, Daniel Vale, St. Agnes, the lockbox, the second box, the list. Clara spoke next. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. She described the knife, the paramedic jacket, Webb's behavior, the hospital's silence, the way Elena had saved her while everyone else froze. Then Naomi copied the flash drive. Nathan Bell scanned the first pages and went pale. This is enough to open emergency warrants, he said. Naomi looked at him. Only if your office doesn't bury it. He met her eyes. That's why she came to both of us. Elena nodded. Copies go out at the same time. Press, federal, independent servers, nurses union, medical boards, everyone. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. You understand there may be names on here you don't want exposed. Elena's throat tightened. Yes. Moretti names. Yes. And if Luca Moretti is implicated, he is. Nathan stopped. Elena's voice did not break. He signed the first transfer. Clara looked at her sharply. Naomi's eyes narrowed. Elena continued. I want that included. The room changed. Not with shock. With recognition. That was the moment they understood. She was not Luca's weapon. She was not Santoro's bait. She was not Daniel's helpless daughter or Amelia's hidden child. She was choosing the truth even where it cut the man who had saved her. Maybe especially there. Nathan Bell nodded slowly. Then we do this clean. The archive room door opened. Rosa drew her gun. Marco entered first. Blood dried along his temple, one arm bound in a sling. Behind him came 2 guards. And then Luca. Elena stood before she could stop herself. He looked like death had followed him into the room and lost the argument by inches. Black coat over bandages, face pale. One hand braced against Marco's shoulder. His eyes found Elena immediately. The entire room held its breath. Clara stepped back. Naomi recognized him and went very still. Nathan Bell's hand moved toward his phone. Luca ignored all of them. He looked only at Elena. You found it. She nodded. You released it? Copies are going out now. His eyes softened with something that looked like pain and relief braided together. Good. Naomi stared at him. You understand you may be incriminating yourself by standing here. Luca turned to her. I do. Nathan Bell watched him carefully. Are you here to interfere with a federal witness? Luca's gaze returned to Elena. No. Then why are you here? For once, Luca did not answer immediately. Elena saw the effort it took for him to remain standing. The bloodless set of his mouth, the slight tremor in his hand against Marco's shoulder. The force of will holding him upright because pride had nothing to do with this anymore. Finally Luca said, to confess. The room went silent. Elena's heart struck once, hard. Luca stepped forward without Marco's help. Only one step. It almost cost him. But he took it. My name is Luca Moretti, he said, voice rough but steady. 10 years ago, I authorized the first transfer of funds into the Santoro Medical Relief Foundation. I did not verify the accounts. I did not question Santoro's structure. I did not care where power went as long as it returned to me useful. Elena's throat tightened. Luca looked at Nathan Bell. Daniel Vale came to me with evidence that the foundation was delaying treatment, laundering money, and selling medical access. I promised him protection. I failed. He died because of that failure. His voice did not shake. But Elena saw the blood darkening beneath his coat. He continued anyway. Amelia Carter was denied timely treatment because Santoro's network redirected her approved aid. I attempted to move her into private care under protection. Santoro threatened her daughter. She refused. The room was silent, except for Naomi's recorder. Luca's eyes returned to Elena. I have spent 10 years hunting Santoro for reasons I told myself were justice. They were not fully. They were pride, revenge, guilt, control. He swallowed. Then said the words Elena had not known she needed until they entered the room. Elena Carter owes me nothing. Daniel Vale owed me nothing. Amelia Carter owed me nothing. The debt is mine. Elena felt tears rise again. She hated that they came. She did not look away. Luca's voice lowered. If my name appears in that evidence, release it. If my family's names appear, release them. If my confession helps destroy what we built, use it. Nathan Bell studied him. Why? Luca looked at Elena, and there it was. Not possession. Not command. Not the dark pull that had frightened and drawn her in equal measure. Surrender. Because she should not have to become like us to win. The sentence broke the last of the room's silence. Clara cried quietly. Naomi looked down at her recorder, visibly shaken. Marco stared at Luca, as if he had just watched his boss step willingly into a grave and call it justice. Elena could not move. For hours, Luca had protected her with violence. This was the first time he protected her by giving up power. Her phone buzzed. Then Clara's. Then Naomi's. Then Nathan Bell's. All at once. Naomi looked at her screen. Her eyes widened. It's live. Elena's pulse stopped. Naomi turned the laptop toward them. The first article had dropped. Then the documents. Then Clara's testimony. Then Luca's confession clip, uploaded through Naomi's encrypted network. Within seconds, the story fractured across the country. Medical charity corruption. Organized crime ties. Judges and hospital executives named. Law enforcement compromise alleged. Nurse whistleblower survives hospital attack. Daniel Vale's name cleared. Amelia Carter's denial of care exposed. Elena stared at the screen. Her parents' names were there. Not hidden. Not buried. Not reduced to paperwork in some locked room. Saying. The door burst open. Rosa lifted her gun. But it was not Santoro's men. It was a young library assistant, breathless, terrified. There are police downstairs. Nathan Bell stood. Real police? The assistant shook her head. I don't know. Marco moved toward the windows. Outside, sirens flooded the street. Too many vehicles. Too fast. Luca turned to Elena. Santoro. Her phone rang again. This time, the number was blocked. Everyone knew. Elena answered and put it on speaker. For the first time, Santoro did not sound amused. You stupid girl. Elena's fingers tightened around the phone. Luca moved closer, but did not take it from her. Santoro breathed hard once. You have no idea what you just unleashed. Elena's voice was steady. Yes, I do. You think truth saves people? No. She looked at Clara, at Naomi, at Nathan, at Marco, at Luca, then back to the phone. People do. A pause. Then Santoro's voice dropped. I will kill everyone in that building. Luca took one step forward, murder alive in his eyes. Elena lifted one hand. He stopped. That small obedience changed the room. Elena spoke into the phone. No, you won't. Santoro laughed harshly. You believe Moretti can stop me? No. Her gaze stayed on Luca. Then she looked at the screen, where documents were multiplying beyond anyone's reach. I believe you just became too visible. Silence. Outside, helicopter blades thundered overhead. Not Santoro's. News. The story had escaped. Naomi looked at her phone, stunned. Every major outlet is picking it up. Nathan Bell's phone rang nonstop. Marco's earpiece crackled. They're pulling back, he said quietly. Santoro's cars are pulling back. Elena kept the phone at her ear. Santoro said nothing. For the first time, she heard it. Not fear exactly. Calculation cracking under exposure. You should have stayed hidden, he whispered. Elena's voice softened. That made it more dangerous. My mother tried that. A long silence. Then she ended the call. The room remained still. No one cheered. Real victories did not feel like cheering. They felt like breathing after years underwater. Luca swayed. Elena reached him before Marco did. Her hands caught his coat. His body was too warm, too heavy, too close. You idiot, she whispered. His mouth curved faintly. You came back angry. I never left angry. His eyes held hers. No? She swallowed. I came back with evidence. Better. Then his knees weakened. This time, Elena let Marco help her lower him into a chair. Nathan Bell was already on the phone, barking orders for federal protective custody, emergency warrants, media coordination. Naomi typed furiously. Clara called every nurse she knew. Rosa barricaded the door with a filing cabinet. Elena knelt in front of Luca and opened his coat. The bandage was soaked again. Of course, she muttered. Luca watched her. What? You confess dramatically, bleed dramatically, almost collapse dramatically. Do you do anything quietly? His eyes softened. I loved you quietly. Elena froze. The room seemed to fall away. Her hands stopped over his wound. Luca's face changed as if the words had escaped him without permission. Maybe the blood loss had stripped away the last of his control. Maybe truth, once released, kept demanding more. Elena's voice was barely audible. Don't. I know. You don't love me. His eyes held hers. No? You met me last night. I found you last night. His voice was weak, rough, devastating. I began loving what you were before I knew your face. Her breath caught. That's guilt. Some of it. That's obsession. Some of it. That's trauma. Yes. Her eyes burned. Then what part is love? Luca looked at her like the answer hurt. The part that wants you free of me. Elena could not speak. Outside, sirens wailed. Phones rang. The world burned open with truth. Inside, Elena Carter knelt before the man who had ruined her life, saved her life, confessed against himself, and handed her the power to destroy him. She should have walked away. Maybe one day she would. But not while he was bleeding. Not while his confession was still warm in the room. Not while her heart was still a battlefield she had not agreed to enter. She pressed fresh gauze against his wound. Hard. Luja he sit. Good, she whispered, tears sliding silently down her face. Stay awake. His hand covered hers. Weakly. Not to control. To stay. Elena. What? His eyes moved to the window, where news helicopters circled above the city and the first gray light of afternoon broke through the storm clouds. Santoro will run. She followed his gaze. No, she said quietly. Luca looked back at her. For the first time since the nightmare began, Elena did not look frightened. She looked like the daughter of Amelia Carter, like the daughter of Daniel Vale, like a woman who had spent her life saving others and had finally decided the city itself was bleeding. He won't run, she said. Her fingers closed around the brass key. He'll hide. Luca's eyes darkened with understanding. Elena stood. Behind her, Clara ended a call and turned with a shaking but determined face. Every nurse on night shift is ready to testify. Naomi lifted her camera. Nathan Bell said, Federal units are moving on Santoro properties now. Marco looked toward Elena, awaiting an order he had no reason to ask from her and every reason to obey. Elena looked at Luca, then at the evidence, then at the storm clearing beyond the glass. Good, she said. Her voice was quiet. Final. Now we find him. Santoro was found before sunset. Not in a mansion. Not in a private jet. Not behind the gates of some elegant estate where men like him usually hid behind lawyers and imported marble. He was found in the basement of an old charity office on the east side of the city, surrounded by shredded documents, dead phones, and 3 men who had already decided loyalty was worth less than federal immunity. He did not die dramatically. That disappointed many people. He was dragged into the rain in handcuffs while cameras flashed, and reporters shouted his name like an accusation. For one brief second, Elena saw him on a live feed in the library archive room, older than his voice had sounded, smaller than the monster she had built in her mind, his silver hair wet against his forehead, his expensive coat darkened by rain. He looked straight into the nearest camera and smiled. Elena did not flinch. Luca, seated beside her with an IV taped to his arm and fresh bandages beneath his black coat, noticed. Of course he did. He wanted you to see that, he said. I know. He wants you afraid of what happens next. Elena looked at the screen as Santoro was pushed into the back of a federal vehicle. Then she thought of her mother's letter, her father's list, Clara's testimony, Naomi's article spreading across every major network, Nathan Bell's warrants cutting through the city like scalpels, and all the nurses from Mercy General standing together outside the hospital, faces pale but visible, refusing to disappear into silence. I'm afraid, Elena said. Luca's eyes moved to her. She met them. I'm just done obeying it. Something softened in his face. Not relief. Not pride exactly. Something quieter. Something that looked too much like hope for a man who had spent his life expecting punishment. Santoro's arrest did not fix the city. Elena learned that quickly. Truth did not sweep through corrupt systems like holy fire and leave them clean by morning. It moved slower than that. Messier. Men denied. Lawyers circled. Politicians performed outrage. Hospital administrators resigned before they could be fired. Judges suddenly remembered vacations. Police chiefs gave statements with careful faces and shaking hands. But the list was real. The evidence was real. Daniel Vale's name was spoken on television not as a criminal, not as a traitor, but as a whistleblower who had died carrying proof. Amelia Carter's medical file was reopened. Her denial of treatment became part of a federal case. For the first time in years, Elena heard strangers say her parents' names with respect. That almost broke her more than grief had. 3 weeks later, Mercy General reopened its emergency wing. Dr. Webb was alive. Barely. Federal agents found him in a warehouse outside the city, beaten, dehydrated, and willing to trade every secret he knew for protection. Elena did not visit him. She thought about it once, then chose sleep instead. That felt like growth. Clara returned to work before Elena did. Madison transferred to pediatrics. Marco sent flowers to every nurse on night shift with no card, though Elena knew exactly who had arranged it because the bouquets were too expensive and too severe to come from anyone else. Luca was arrested publicly. He had insisted on it. No quiet deal, no private surrender, no back door. He walked into the federal building in a black suit, pale but upright, surrounded not by armed men, but by attorneys, federal agents, and every camera in the city. Elena watched from across the street. He had asked her not to come. So naturally, she had. When his eyes found her through the crowd, he stopped. For one impossible moment, the noise disappeared. No reporters, no sirens, no flashing cameras. Just Luca Moretti standing beneath a gray winter sky, looking at Elena Carter like she was the only witness whose judgment mattered. He did not smile. He simply placed one hand over his heart. Then he went inside. Months passed. The city changed slowly. Not cleanly, but visibly. Mercy General removed 3 administrators. The Santoro Medical Relief Foundation was dismantled. Families began filing claims. Nurses testified. Doctors testified. Accountants testified. Men who had spent years protected by money suddenly discovered that exposure was its own kind of violence. Elena did not become famous in the way people expected. She refused most interviews. Naomi Reed wrote the book anyway, but Elena made her change the title twice because every version made her sound too fragile or too heroic. She was neither. She was tired. She was angry. She was healing. Some days, healing looked like opening her mother's old boxes without shaking. Some days, it looked like visiting the river where Daniel Vale died and leaving a pair of white baby shoes on the railing with a note that simply said, "I know now." Some days, healing looked like sitting alone in her apartment after repairs were finished, listening to the faucet drip and realizing she was no longer afraid of the silence. And some days, it looked like visiting Luca. The first time, she told herself it was for answers. The second time, for closure. By the 5th, even she stopped believing her own excuses. He met her in a federal medical wing, not prison exactly, not freedom either. A place built for men who knew too much to be left unguarded and had confessed too much to disappear. He looked better each time. Still dangerous. Still too quiet. Still Luca. But something in him had been stripped down, not weakened, clarified. Power had once surrounded him like armor. Now consequence did. Elena found she preferred him that way. "You look less terrifying behind glass," she told him one afternoon. He sat across from her, one hand resting near the phone receiver, dark eyes warming at the sound of her voice. "I will try to recover my reputation." "Don't." His mouth curved faintly. "There she is." She rolled her eyes, but this time she smiled. The smile changed the room. Luca saw it. He always saw too much. "Elena, no dramatic speeches. I was going to say thank you." She paused. "That was worse." "For what?" "For making sure I lived long enough to lose everything properly." She looked down at her hands. "You didn't lose everything." His eyes stayed on her face. "No." She hated how one quiet word could still reach parts of her she had not given permission to anyone to touch. "No," she said softly. "You lost the empire." A pause. Then Luca leaned closer to the glass. "And what did I keep?" Elena should have answered carefully. She should have protected herself. She should have remembered every reason this man was dangerous, every wound connected to his name, every truth that still stood between them like smoke after a fire. Instead, she looked at him and told the truth. "You kept the chance to become someone who deserves to be visited." His eyes changed. For a moment he could not speak. That was when Elena understood something her mother had tried to tell her in the letter. Justice was not the same as hatred, and forgiveness, if it ever came, would not be a gift handed to Luca. It would be a door Elena opened for herself. Not today, maybe not soon, but one day. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the high windows. Not the violent rain of the night they met. This rain was gentle, almost clean. Elena stood. Luca's hand moved slightly toward the glass, then stopped. He still remembered boundaries. Good. She picked up her coat. I'll come next week. He looked at her like she had just given him something impossible. Elena. She stopped at the door. What? His voice was quiet. No command. No possession. Only truth. I loved you quietly. Her chest tightened. This time she did not tell him not to. This time she simply looked back at him through the glass. And after a long moment she said, then, keep learning how. She walked out before he could answer. Outside, the rain touched her face. Elena lifted her hood, stepped onto the sidewalk, and breathed in the cold city air. For the first time in years, she was not running from the past. She was carrying it. Her mother's courage. Her father's truth. Her own name. And somewhere behind her, a dangerous man sat behind glass, finally learning that love was not ownership, protection was not control, and redemption was not a speech. It was waiting. It was suffering. It was changing without being promised a reward. Elena crossed the street as the city lights shimmered through the rain. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Clara. Night shift misses you. Also, Madison says pediatrics is scarier than mafia men. Elena laughed. A real laugh. Small. Surprised. Alive. She looked up at the hospital skyline in the distance, at the city that had taken so much from her, and somehow failed to take everything. Then she kept walking. Not toward safety. Not toward danger. Toward a life that finally belonged to her,